Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Josh.
And this is the Bad at Magic Podcast, a podcast about games, life, and other things. And welcome to episode 79.
79 is auspicious for a couple of reasons, Ben.
Yeah, what are they?
Well, the first one is that 79 is the atomic number for gold. Which is so fitting because this is a golden event today. Because I have exciting news, everyone. Faithful listeners, you can all rejoice. Breathe easy, knowing that the Bad at Magic podcast will continue on for its fourth season. This is season 4, episode 1 right now. And then the powers that be, our board of directors, our better halves, and the landlords have all cleared us to renew the cast for another season. Woo. And even better, I just found out yesterday that the FCC has dropped all charges, so we are good to
go. I'm imagining Alec Baldwin in some smoky back room making a deal on our behalf.
Alec Baldwin sponsored the podcast.
Yeah, so gold. Speaking of gold, I don't know, Josh, if you have any of those like weird hobby YouTube channels that you watch, but I have one I picked up not a year or so ago, and he's this retired Navy chief. His name, he goes by the name Sri Tips, and he just likes to refine precious metals. And it's fascinating. He just has a GoPro and he records everything he does, and you watch him, refining gold and silver and platinum and all kinds of stuff, and it's just fantastic. So I'll link in the show notes.
He just digs up rocks out in the wild and then smelts
I always
it.
imagine when you were refining gold that you put it in this big vat and you boil it until all the stuff comes out, and then you pour it out and it's just pure. But that's not it at all. It's mostly chemical processes that refine gold.
I love how you reference this as a hobby YouTube channel. Is this something that you're looking into getting into?
No, absolutely not. Oh my gosh. He'll pour a little tiny bar of gold the size of this deck of cards, and then he'll be like, yeah, that's worth $75,000. Yeah, no thank you.
Oh, you don't want $75,000?
Well, okay, so what gold refiners do sometimes is they'll buy up lots of just scrap. So they'll buy up lots of low carat gold, 14, 20 carat gold, and then they'll buy up things that are known to have gold in them, like the trimmed off fingers of scrap computer expansion cards.
Okay.
And then they go through physical and mechanical processes to kind of separate out the stuff that isn't precious metals, and then they go through chemical processes to refine it down to a high level of purity, and then what's left over. But I've looked, they use tons and tons of hydrochloric and nitric acid. There's so many tools and overhead, and by the time they're done, I think he spent more on chemicals than the gold is worth. Good thing he's probably making money off his YouTube channel, otherwise he wouldn't even break even.
You're also negating the value of a hard day's work, Ben. There's nothing like pouring a gallon of hydrochloric acid into some chemicals to not that I'm speaking from experience, but that can be very rewarding, I'm sure.
Yeah, oh yeah, and it's enjoyable to watch too. But what really is the talent of the 21st century isn't your ability to do something interesting. It's your ability to do something interesting and edit it into a good video.
And we circle back to content creation, which is what we're talking about with the episode number 79. Welcome to season 4, everybody.
We've been renewed. Great.
We did it. We don't hate each other yet.
Yeah.
Woo.
Okay, Josh, so we kind of had a long gap because we recorded episode 78 early and then episode 79 on regular schedule. And during that time, I took a pilgrimage back to, I won't say the home of the Bad at Magic podcast, but it goes back farther than that. So I had a business trip to Hampton, Virginia, the location of Langley Air Force Base, Virginia, which was both your and I first operational duty station, which is where we met, where you taught me to play Magic. Anyway, I went back there for a week last week.
Awesome. And how is our old stomping ground?
It was great. I stopped by the comic book store where you taught me. Unfortunately, none of our old friends were there, so it kind of felt hollow. It probably, what it feels like to go to the Cheers bar in Boston and none of the regulars are in there. It's the place, but it's the people that make it.
Those would have been the regulars from 13 or 14 years ago. I would be disappointed if they were all still there.
So I went in there 2 years ago, and at least we knew the owners, and one of them was still there, Amber. She was in there last time I was in there, so I expected to see her, but she wasn't there when I went in.
Oh, Amber.
So that's all fine and good. I'll put a photo in the show notes of me hanging out at our old comic book store, but I want to tell you a story about what happened. So when I found out I was going to have that business trip out there for a week, I'd had a previous family commitment that was potentially a conflict. So the agenda that the Air Force unit out there sent out said, hey, plan on staying until at least 2 o'clock in the afternoon so we can summarize everything, hand out all the tasks, and not let everyone go. Well, I don't know if you know this, but when you're trying to fly back from the East Coast to the West and you're leaving at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you need time to like go turn in your rental car and get a flight, and that means you're not getting back home till like 10 or 11 p.m., which was no bueno because it happened to be my daughter's 19th birthday, and I bought us tickets to go see stand-up comedian Brian Regan here in Shreveport.
That night, the night that you were supposedly flying back in from a business trip.
Right. So when I made my initial travel arrangements, I just planned to absolutely not comply with what the Air Force had told me to do. I made my travel arrangements early in the morning. I told my other guy that had come with me, like, listen, you can stay around and get the last stuff. I'm not sticking around. I'm getting out of here. I got to get back for my daughter's birthday.
Okay.
So,
I mean, you're an officer in the United States Air Force. Like, you don't get to do that kind of stuff. They don't care.
I totally do. I delegated it. I felt kind of bad. Like, anyway, what happened is over the course of the week, we got ahead of schedule, and on Thursday, they ended up kind of calling it off early. And so they said, hey, you can change your travel arrangements and leave in the morning. I already had my arrangements. My friend tried to change his, and he couldn't. So he was kind of stuck there all day with nothing to do, but he was kind and took me to the airport. So when I got to Norfolk International Airport, I had a connecting flight from Norfolk to Charlotte, and then from Charlotte back to Shreveport, which is the reverse of how I came out there. However, this was not an ordinary trip.
Okay.
So I went to the counter, the ticket counter, and checked in kind of the old-fashioned way instead of using the kiosk. I went up to the agent. That's helpful because for some reason I can never figure out how to get the kiosk to treat me right as an active duty member of the military, because the airline will check my bag for free and and upgrade my boarding priority and those kinds of things as if I just show them my military ID.
Be careful, Ben. Your old cantankerous side is showing. Oh, I can't get this freaking kiosk to do the thing.
If you ever got it to work, good on you. I'll post a video of some guy, kicking over a bunch of kiosks. I'm sure he's felt the same way that I did. So they checked my bag, they printed out my ticket, stapled them together, and handed it to me. And I looked at it, and it talked about the departing flight, and I saw that it was going from Norfolk to Charlotte like I expected, and I folded it and stuck it in my pocket. Now, I don't know if it was just Norfolk Airport or if the FAA or the whatever the security guys are called, TSA, have changed their rules recently, but they kind of stopped scanning your tickets. They only check your ID card when you go through. So I went through security, and the I must have showed them my tickets because the TSA says you're going to the wrong gate. The airport basically lies, and I was going to the wrong gate. I was like, oh crap! So I went back the other way, went to the right gate, went through security, made it on time. No big deal. I boarded the plane, went in, and sat down my seat, and was getting comfortable when I see this thing start to unfold. There's a guy coming down the aisle, and he looks down at his ticket, and he looks up at the map on the overhead bins of the seats, and he looks at the one over my head, and he looks at his ticket. He looks at the one over my head again, and he looks at his ticket, and he comes up to me, and he's like, 21C? I'm like, yeah, 21C. And I pull out my ticket and look at it, and we both look at our tickets, and we both have the same seat number on our ticket.
Oh, that's fine. I mean, I'm sure they give you one of those seatbelt extensions. One of you can sit on the other person's lap, and it just goes across both of you.
Share a seat. It was getting pretty crowded at this point. There was a few empty seats left, but there were still people coming on. So the 4 rows back, the flight attendant overhears it, and she goes, it's okay. I noticed what's going on. That's what I'm here for. So I stand up, and she takes the 2 tickets in her hands, and she compares them to each other. And she's like, oh, all right. And then she reaches down. She's got like a little handheld device on her belt, and she boops something, and she says, okay, you can sit over here. I don't know why they didn't tell you your ticket has changed. I thought that would be the end of it. I stuff my ticket back in the pocket, go to the new seat number she tells me, and then we sit there. He gets in the seat I was in, and I end up in a different seat. I just move my bag, no big deal. And then we're sitting there at the gate, and I just get engrossed in my phone or whatever, listening to the audiobook that we were going to talk about today. And,
I can see this coming a mile away.
Maybe. I didn't. Well, I did not see this coming.
You're going to get that tap on the shoulder and be like, hey, you're in my seat.
No. There's no one moving. Everyone is seated. The doors closed, and we're just sitting there at the gate. And I'm not paying attention to what's going on because I don't really care. Just like I've already turned my brain off as far as like worrying about what other people are doing because they got to do their thing. I don't got to care. So I'm sitting there on my seat, and it's just been too long, and I start to look up, and everyone's seated, and nothing's happening, and then the door at the front of the plane opens, and a flight attendant that looks like she's not part of the air crew comes on board holding a walkie-talkie.
Oh, that's not a good sign.
So she starts walking down the aisle, and she's looking at the map overhead of the seats, and then she gets to my seat, and she looks at the map over my head, and she goes, "Mr. Rich?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she goes in her walkie-talkie, and she goes, "I got him." And I'm like, oh no, like my trip and my daughter's birthday kind of flashes before my eyes, and I'm like, uh-oh. And then she turns around and goes back out. They close the door, the plane goes, and we back out of the gate. I wasn't paying attention. Maybe 10 minutes were added on. I think it was because of me.
For what? Like, did you figure out why this mysterious thing happened?
Okay, here's the problem. Not only did I not figure out why, I just thought, that was weird, and then I forgot all about it. Took a nap or something. Didn't think anything of it, but this was not over.
I'm so confused. Like, what is happening? Is somebody stealing your identity? Is somebody like smuggling like illicit drugs in your name? Like, what's happening here, Ben?
I still haven't figured it out at this point, and I'm letting you hang in suspense because I was still in suspense.
Well, okay. Did this come back and rear its head again?
So we land in Charlotte, and I get off, and I'm looking for one of the screens that show where my connecting flight's going to be. I hadn't like connected and looked it up on my phone, so I was just doing it the old-fashioned way again. And I had to go to the bathroom, so I went to the bathroom, and I came out, and I look up at the screens, and just as I look up at the screens, I hear them call my name for last call.
Oh, geez.
To board the connecting flight. I was like, oh, crap. So I run over to the gate, and I pull out my ticket and step up to the line and scan it, and it goes boop. And I look at it, and there's two tickets stapled together. So I turn to the other one, and I scan that one, and it goes boop. And the gate agent says, "Let me see that." And he takes my ticket, and he says, "This is to Omaha."
The ticket was to Omaha?
Yeah, this is to Omaha. And I looked at it, and sure enough, it was. And then I had in my mind, and then I looked at the name on the ticket, and it was Richard J. Blevins.
That's not you.
Then my mind flashed back to the moment when he and I both handed our tickets to the other flight attendant on the plane when she was comparing our seats.
You did the classic planes, trains, and automobiles thing.
Maybe. I imagined that she'd done the switcheroo and she handed his tickets to me and my tickets to him because they both had the same seat number on them. There was a moment where she was holding both, I think. I couldn't remember. And the gate agent goes into like, all right, I'm closing the gates mode. So he's like, well, you can go down 15 gates and there's a customer service desk and they can help you get this sorted out. And my whole thing flashes before my eyes. I'm like, oh crap, I'm going to get stuck in this airport in Charlotte. I'm not going to get a connecting flight. I'm going to miss my daughter's birthday. I'm a terrible father. And then I said, wait a minute, didn't you just call my name? And he was like, yeah, I did. And I pulled out my ID card and he looked at it and he was like, okay. And he printed another ticket and handed it to me.
Nice. Well, that's a good solution to that scenario.
Right. And I don't think if I'd heard him call my name, I probably wouldn't have worked that out. Anyway, I get on the plane and I sit down and I board. And once we're safely in the air and they're not, calling on walkie-talkies about me anymore, I'm trying to figure out what happened. And I'm guessing one of two things happened. Either somehow when I initially checked in and checked my bag, they had an extra copy of someone else's tickets there and gave them to me. Or there was the switcheroo thing on the plane with his and my tickets. But I can't figure out how I ended up with his seat number on my ticket. I think I had a copy of his ticket all along.
I think that this entire situation was caused because you're old and cantankerous. Like, if you had gone to the kiosk, you'd have gotten the correct ticket because it's impossible for them to print out the wrong person's ticket for you. If you had the tickets on your phone instead of paper tickets, there never would have been the opportunity to have them switched when you handed them over to the flight attendant. Like, all of this could have been avoided with a more digital lifestyle, you old bastard.
Josh, I love that analysis. That was fantastic. That was not the conclusion I had drawn, but you are absolutely right.
These are a problem of yesteryear, man. We've solved the ticketing issue. We have solved the mixing up paperwork thing. It's all on your phone. It's all QR codes.
I totally suffered from a classic mix-up of paperwork that could have been solved if I'd done either the fully technological thing or the partially technological thing. But because I did the non-technological thing, I had these issues.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. And what's funny is that actually ties into the next thing we were going to talk about.
Yeah.
So we just kind of finalized our plans for...
Oh my gosh, that was so hard. Those guys do not know how to technology.
Well, hang on. Don't give away the story yet. Because listeners, I don't know if you've been paying attention the last few episodes or if this is the first time you're listening. Hooray, welcome. But we are super excited to go to Magic's 30th birthday party. They're calling it Magic 30 in Las Vegas, Nevada on the 28th through the 30th of October of this year, 2022. If you're listening from the far future, I hope things are better, and I'm sorry you missed the tournament. So, like, we suffered from the problem, both of us did, that this was going to be run like every other Magic tournament that we've ever been to in the history of Magic. What we failed to recognize is that this is the first time that the publisher of the game, Wizards, is actually putting on the tournament instead of some third-party like tournament running people. So I don't know if they haven't done this before, they don't have the proper experience, they don't have the right people, whatever. But a lot of things were different from this time around that caught us off guard. So you and I worked together and we figured out when we were going to fly in and where we were going to stay and like what the dates were, and we got all of that hammered out. Bingo, bango, no problem. Then we just ignored it because we assumed, like every other tournament, you would roll in the day of and say, I want to play in event X. Okay, well, it starts in an hour. What is your name and information? And it's going to be this much money. And you just pay at the site. Like that. Right, that's how it's always been. It's always.
We assumed that it would be the way it's always been. Even though it's been 3 years.
Even though it's been 3 years. And you just roll in, you tell them what you want to do, and you pay for it while you're there. And what should have tipped us off the first time is the fact that there are passes to even get into the venue. Like, this is the first time I've ever seen...
that's not always the case. It's usually free to get in.
Usually, yes, because Magic is about the gathering, but not anymore. So there's a cover charge to get into the building, which I'm a little okay with. It keeps the riffraff out. Only serious Magic players here. Little Johnny that just picked up his first deck last weekend, you're not going to get your parents to give you $160 to enter this venue. Real Magic players only, please. But then... after we made our travel plans, I completely just dumped that in my brain and just started thinking about, it's going to be so exciting. These are the tournaments that I want to do. Yay. And then I was listening to a podcast earlier this week. It comes out every Monday and it's, cross promotion. Am I allowed to say who they are? I'm listening to the MTG Goldfish podcast. Hey guys, reach out to us. We'll do a cross promotional thing. It'd be great. But I'm listening to them talk about Magic 30 and I'm listening to them talk about all the problems they had with stuff instantly selling out. And then as I'm listening, I'm starting to pick up on the contextual clues and things and realizing that Wizards had created an online portal where you would sign up for the specific events at the 3-day event. Which is new. Which is brand new, never been done before. But they were having people sign up in advance. And this podcast was talking about how a bunch of the stuff had sold out within an hour of it opening.
Yeah, like the main event tournament.
Yeah, the main event modern tournament that you were going to participate in was completely sold out within an hour of it opening up.
Yeah, I wonder if they aren't still going to open up more slots or something.
I don't know. I mean, they have a very strict plan for how many people are going to feed into the winners tournament on Sunday. The numbers make sense that they can't let anybody else in unless they start adding rounds to it.
I guess podcasts are not a good place to get your news about this kind of thing. We should be on Twitter or something.
Well, I guess this is where I'm too old too, because I guess I just wasn't clued into a more real-time social media network.
You start texting me these frantic, we're going to go there and not be able to play any Magic.
I was freaking out because as soon as I heard that on that podcast I was listening to, I sat down and I bought my weekend pass, which weren't sold out. All of the premium ones, just to get in for the weekend is $160. But there's some upgraded packages where you get a bunch of extras. All of those were completely sold out.
Access to meet the creator of Magic and VIP passes and after hours parties and stuff like that.
A bunch of stuff that people were very interested in, and it was just gone. Yeah. And then the worst thing, the thing that really put the lead weight in my stomach was, after you sign up for the weekend, you can click through and then start signing up for the individual tournaments. And it was showing, when I was on there, Ben, it was no kidding, at least half of the events were completely booked and they just sold out and they were not selling registration for it anymore.
Yeah, that was disturbing. So you sent me all that and I was like, fine, I'll go in. I was trying to do something else, but I let you distract me and I got in and got registered. Not for the ones I wanted, but at least for something, so it won't be completely fruitless. But you know what? Looking on the bright side, we'll be able to fill the time with other things.
Yes. I got into one of the events I wanted to do, and another one I had to make a compromise on, so I'm a little sad about that. But one, I guess, kind of blessing in disguise that came out of this is neither one of us has a whole lot to do on Saturday. I think we signed up for one of the major events, and it doesn't start until later in the afternoon. And so I think our plan is we are going to give back to our Bad at Magic community, and we're going to try to reach out to our listeners. And listeners, if you're going to be there, Saturday's the day. Saturday in the morning, we're going to do stuff. Ben, you're bringing your cube, aren't you?
Yep, I'm bringing my cube so we can get an 8-man cube draft together. That'll be fun.
If we can get 8 people, yes. If we can't get 8 people, I'm bringing a commander deck, and I'm requiring you to bring a commander deck. So if we have fewer than 8, we can try to do a big game of commander.
Okay.
I'm still kind of hoping that they do at-will events, and like where you can just, like the drafts, like the normal thing where they have a sign-up list, and as soon as they get 8 people, they'll fire off a draft. I really hope they're still doing
demand.
That. On demand. Thank you. If they have on-demand drafts and we have enough listeners, I would love to do a Bad at Magic draft pod. That'd be sweet. And
okay, I'll bring along all of our Bad at Magic souvenir swag, and I've got some new ones, Josh. I don't know if I should tell or if let these be a surprise.
Well, I mean, as long as it doesn't change my packing plans in any way, shape, or form.
So I've still got a few of the challenge coins that we made several years ago. Those will be available. And then I have some brand new swirly marbled green and black and gray magic Bad at Magic podcast dice.
Ooh.
They look really good. I got them right here in my hand. Let me pull one out and show you.
I just love the clicking noises that they make. Oh man, those are solid. Yes.
Yeah, and they're in the font of our podcast, so they look great.
Oh, they do look great. That is unusual. Usually you see pips on dice, but these actually have the numbers written out.
Yes.
Very cool. Nice. I like that.
And I should have coming in shortly some Bad at Magic logo card sleeves.
Oh man, I hope they're good quality because Ben, it's going to take a really solid draft sleeve to get me away from my Dragon Shield pinks. I'll tell you that right now.
Okay. All right. We'll see. So lots of cool stuff. And I got one other idea that we can do that should be fun. So,
all right. Well, and then we're talking about, these are all the things that we're planning on doing while we're at the tournament. And like, there are other things that we want to do after hours, but I don't know if we're going to include anybody in that. There's also, like, if you can't make it, we are also planning on doing some content creation for all of you wonderful listeners that are out there. I know we're going to try to record our normal episode while we're out there because that's our normal recording weekend anyway.
So episode 1 of Bad at Magic was at a magic convention in Las Vegas 3 years ago. So this will be the 3rd anniversary of the podcast.
Kind of. This timing's a little off, but yes, we're close. Then I think we should do a bonus episode. I want to try to do some stuff for the YouTube channel that we haven't been doing a whole lot of. We're just trying to get as much out there as we can.
Awesome. Okay, great. Well, speaking of old episode, there's one other thing I want to say to kind of wrap up my travel nightmare. So after we took off out of Charlotte and I'm in the air, I just realized that I hadn't sorted all this out in my brain yet, and that my suitcase was probably on a plane on its way to Omaha.
Oh no! Did all your stuff end up in Omaha?
So I'm sitting there thinking about my stuff going to Omaha, and then I realized that they handed me one of those like bag receipts that show where your bag's tagged to go, which I never ever look at. Okay. So I just kind of rummage through my pockets and uncrinkle it and pull it out and unfold it and look at it, and it said Shreveport. I was like, oh, great.
I really wanted you to say Anchorage, Alaska or something.
No. So I got to Shreveport. The bag came out. I walked out of the Air Force. I put my headphones on because, again, I was listening to the book. I was waiting for my wife to pick me up. And I walked out of the airport, and there was construction going on. So, like, all of the exits were closed except one. So I went through the one everyone was going through. And there was a lady staying there kind of in my way. And she says something to me, and I didn't hear her. And then she repeats again a little bit louder. And I said, what was that? And she says, watch your step. And I look down, and I'm standing in a pile of dog poop.
In the one exit from the airport?
Yeah.
Oh well,
yeah.
That's a strong recommendation for Shreveport.
So that brought my crappy travel day to a fitting end. But I made it back in time and saw Brian Regan. He was hilarious. Happy birthday, Kaya. It was great. All right, so on episode 33 of the Bad at Magic podcast, you and I examined a sample scenario that's commonly used in the philosophical community to try to strip away everything down to its bare bones and just imagine a moral dilemma. You sent me a video by YouTuber Markiplier, sponsored the podcast, and he said where he had done this new website that had just come out. So there's a website called Neil.fun, and they added just this software applet that allows you to interact with different versions of the trolley problem. Did you go to the website and try it?
I didn't go to the website, no, but I did think about like all of the different scenarios that were presented to him. I thought about what I would have done in each of those scenarios.
So the classic and original version of the trolley problem is a simple one. There's a set of tracks with a Y with a switch on it, and you're standing near the switch. And the trolley is heading towards 5 people that are tied to the tracks. No way to stop the trolley. And on the other Y of the tracks is 1 person. And then you have a moral dilemma. And that dilemma is, do you switch the junction so that the trolley goes towards the single person instead of the 5 people?
And depending on your perspective or your own, like how you derive your moral values, there is no correct answer because from a utilitarian point of view, you switch the tracks and less people die. But from a deontological point of view, if you take any action, you are now responsible for the deaths.
Right. Exactly. And so it kind of pares it down to that. And people have used this as a framework, a structure for then adjust a few of the parameters of the decision you have to make and then determine the boundaries of how much involvement you're willing to make.
This is the classic example of this. It's usually a very dirty joke. I'm going to try to do the best PG version I can. So, Ben, would you let somebody take pictures of you naked for $10 million?
Sure.
Okay, how about $10?
No.
Okay, well, we know what you are. We've already established that. Now we're just negotiating price.
Right. Yes.
That's what this trolley problem thing was trying
$10
to do.
$10 million is a lot of money.
Yeah, you would be irresponsible parent not to take $10 million.
Okay, so if you go, I'll put a link in the show notes, but if you go to Neil.fun, you can do this where it's just interactive. It gives you a little applet. It gives you the problem in front of you and basically asks you the question, and then all you have to do is decide whether or not you're going to throw the lever. And don't throw the lever or throw the lever.
Right, and they just keep changing it up to kind of like really narrow in to figure out where your morality lies. And did you actually go there and write down every single one of the...
Yes, I did, because the part of this that fascinated me is how the people that had done this software applet had really made an effort to kind of try to go towards all the different areas that might influence someone's morality. And then after you do it, it shows you of the like 1.6 million people or so that have gone to this website and done it, and there's nothing scientific about it. It could have been the same person 400,000 times. But of all those people, you get to see how what you decided to do compares to them.
Okay. Are we going to go through these? Is that why you wrote them all down?
So I don't think I want to do all of them because I want to encourage our listeners to go check it out.
Okay.
But I did want to do a few of them. So the first one obviously is like you said, from a deontological point of view, if you get involved, you are now a murderer. Like if you just stay away, you could probably say, hey, it was going to happen anyway, I just didn't get involved. But if you get involved and now one person dies because you threw the lever, even though you saved 5 lives, you killed a person.
Yeah, you still have to look at that person's family and explain, yes, I chose to kill your person because it saved these other people.
And it seems pretty clear that trading 1 life for 5 seems fine. But then you hear other versions of this where you don't abstract away a lot of the details. For instance, what if you could get one person that was a match for 5 people on 5 different organ donation waiting lists, kill them, harvest their organs, and give it to those 5 people? Effectively, it's the same thing as the trolley problem, but you wouldn't get the same outcome for the decision.
I really like the one where they just switched it up a little bit, where they said, okay, what about 2 people on one track and 1 person on a track? And then they changed it.
Then do you get involved?
Then you get involved. What about if it's 5 people on one track and your best friend on the other track?
One of my favorites was, what if it's going to hit 5 lobsters or you throw the lever and it hits a cat?
And what's funny is then the funniest part of that one I remember was not the decision that the person made, but then seeing the results after. And how many people would kill the cat as opposed to the lobsters or vice versa is just interesting.
Yeah, so a couple of them were new ones that I hadn't seen, even when we examined this in episode 33. Like, what if on the spur is your life savings and it will be destroyed if you throw the lever?
Yeah.
Are you willing to give up your life savings to save these 5 people?
I mean, you would hope that after you did that, you could explain to those 5 people. It's like, hey, that actually cost me financially. I would like to be reimbursed, please.
Now, what if the lever's right next to you and throwing the lever, the trolley will run over you?
Yeah, somehow it's 4 people versus you. Do you throw the lever to kill yourself, essentially?
Yeah.
Man, I don't know.
So I love that they did one where the Mona Lisa was on the tracks. Do you kill 4 people or a priceless work of art? Because this one really divides people.
Work of art every time. Like, I don't care. Like, it's a painting. Like, we have enough pictures of it at this point. Like, who cares about the original painting of a person? There are 4 actual people that are going to die.
Right. You could make arguments in favor of the opposite, though. And in fact, we kind of do sometimes. Like, for instance, in the military, when we're talking about, if you go back to like the World War II era where you were getting objectives in terms of acceptable losses, there was just kind of a value assigned to a human life. And it was less than some weapon systems or some secrets or some information. And we were willing to sacrifice a certain number of human lives in favor of a weapons platform, an objective, a secret.
That was World War II, Ben. Like, times have changed.
I know.
When
Times
it
have
comes to
changed.
Acceptable losses is not something you're allowed to say in the military anymore.
Well, but would we value the Mona Lisa more or less than then?
Than a human life? I don't know. That's a good question.
So here was an interesting one they had. What if the lever speeds up the trolley?
Yeah, that was a good one.
Like, it'll hurt less.
Yeah, maybe, you think. Hopefully they'll
get down the
terror
a little bit. It just makes it go faster. It gets it over with.
Okay, the one that really threw me, the one that I had to like pause the video and sit and stare at for a minute was one track is 1 human. If you throw the switch, it kills 1 human. But on the normal track is 4 fully sentient AI robots.
Yeah, that was an interesting one.
It was, because I had to pause it because in my own mind, logically and principally, I want to believe that if they were no kidding fully sentient artificial intelligences, then logically there's no difference from my perspective from a human person.
Huh.
But then my gut's like, there's no way that's going to hold up in an argument against anybody. Like, if I kill a human to save 4 toasters, like, I'm going to go to jail.
Yeah. And there are other things we do in our life that kind of bring out that level of morality in people. Like, even the way someone talks to an Amazon Echo device.
Okay. Just whether or not they
see the
ask
people that are being polite to the toaster as opposed to the ones that just treat it like a toaster.
Right. Do you thank your digital assistants, Ben?
Sometimes I abstract it away. Like, sometimes if I ask my robot to do something and it does it in a way that really surprises me or pleases me, I feel grateful to, and I direct that gratitude at it rather than the programmers that figured all that out.
I'll tell you this: when I plug in my electric car at night, I thank her for a safe journey and tuck her into bed and like tell her I'll see her in the morning.
Yes, I do talk to my car that way.
Yeah.
Okay. So another one was the classic, like, on the trolley's headed towards 5 elderly people. Do you throw the lever to save their lives and kill a baby?
There was another version where it's like the trolley somehow adjusts people's age. And so it can hit 5 people and take 10 years off their life, or it can hit 1 person and take 50 years off their life.
Yes. Those really stress the borders of our morality.
And that's the thing. Like, I would encourage people, if you have any interest in this topic whatsoever, go either watch the video or actually click through the game. And because this was so fascinating, is some people are going to find these trivial and just click through certain, like, no problem. But there's always going to be 1 or 2 that are going to stop you in your tracks and make you really think about who you are.
I think so. If you think you're so clear about your morality that none of these problems could ever faze you, try all 28 of these. At least 1 will.
I will say the best part of the whole game is at the end, when you get to the end credit screen and it says, "Congratulations, you have solved philosophy."
You've solved philosophy. All right. So that was a good revisit of the trolley problem. If you really want to delve into that, go back and listen to episode 33 of the Bad at Magic podcast. And if you also want to try it, link in the show notes at neil.fun. You can check out these interactive, absurd trolley problems. Josh, I think it's time for Bad at Husbanding. After episode 77, I think there had been something that you'd done when you reported on your trip to Legoland, and you wanted to perhaps follow up on that.
So I've been back and forth on this, like honestly bringing this back up because it was so long ago, Ben. Who even remembers episode 77?
I know of someone that remembers.
Apparently. So I was talking about, like I was mentioning like some very vivid memories that I have of like when I was a kid and like coming back from vacation. And then like I remember my dad like really working to, like decompress and do all the dad stuff.
You got home and you went to your room and kicked off your shoes and you're like, I wonder where Dad is. And you went out there and he was out in the garage unloading the camper and working hard after a long drive.
Yes. And that image has never left me. And like I, every few years come back to it and digest a little bit more and get a little more wisdom from it. And whether or not, I'm not going to say if it's super formative, but it has informed the decisions I make when trying to be a dad.
I agree with that, Josh. I feel like we have those moments in our life that almost exist in our head, like a snapshot of what we consider to be the next step in our life.
Maybe. I don't know if I'd use those words, but I'm with you.
Or a representation of the ideal, or
something like that.
I don't know, something to aspire towards.
Let's make it abstract like that. Yeah, just this nebulous idea of like this is informing the idea of the person that I want to be.
Right.
Well, so here's the problem: is that I was hesitant to revisit this because it's more my style to just like never admit fault or blame or like that I've done anything less than perfect. That's just not me, Ben. Our regular listeners know that I don't make mistakes. And so to recant something on the podcast and apologize to the internet for it, I mean, that's way out of character.
All right. So you're not going to do it?
That said, when I was describing this situation and talking about how like, oh, well, my job is to work. And like, I don't know what everybody else was doing, but Dad was out there doing the work and that's what I want to be. I want to keep doing this work. Whew. So Ben, there are a handful of women in my life that really kind of latched onto that idea in a way that I had not intended. And so let me try to walk that back and see how far out of the doghouse I can get.
What? Why?
Well, so the idea is that while I was saying it, my focus was on the lessons that I had learned and the things that my dad was doing. But I must have communicated it in a way that put the better half, like my mother and my wife, into like this, oh, well, they just went in the house and like went to sleep and like, oh, I just can't anymore. That wasn't my intention, but apparently that is what I communicated. And so,
okay, I get that, but I distinctly remember when you told me the story and you didn't say a word about the wife or mother, one way or the other.
But Ben, it doesn't matter what I said. What matters is that the message that was communicated to those people was a disparaging one, and I don't want that. Like okay. In this case, it's one of those things. I
kind of get that.
This is the back and forth argument all the time.
Okay.
It's like, well,
let's define our positions. You take the position where you're defending their position, and I'm going to take the defensive. Go ahead.
I think what you and I are arguing about is something different. But here, I did not intend to imply that the female counterparts in those stories, be either my mother, my wife, or anybody else's spouse, mother, or female relatives, I did not intend to imply that they weren't doing anything while I was just holding up the family one-handed. Like, it takes a village, and Lord knows my wife does way more of the parenting work than I do a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So I wasn't intending to send that message, and I'm sorry if I did.
Okay. Apology accepted on their behalf, I guess, if I can do that, if I'm allowed to do that.
Well, I think what you were starting to balk at is the idea that, yes, you're right. Even if I didn't say those words specifically, and even if I didn't intend those words specifically, if my communication was received in that way, I am still partially responsible for it.
I think we should be given in hermeneutics of generosity for our blind spots. Like, you were thinking about what your dad was doing and you went out and saw what he was doing, and that shaped your idea of what it meant for you to be a man.
Right, but that doesn't excuse me from not being more inclusive in what I was talking about, or being like, I was perceived as being dismissive of the contributions of the females in those stories. And
okay.
I don't want that at all.
So I'm gonna go out on a limb here, deliberately, and potentially get myself in a little bit of trouble here.
No, that's never happened before.
You'll try to stop me, but I don't listen. So I think that there's a great amount of value in the partnership of my wife and I in taking care of our household and raising our children. And in some cases, there's simply a finite amount of work that we both understand and can contribute to. And it just helps to have two people that are both contributing to that work.
Okay.
And in some cases and in some ways, there are things that require two different people who have different personalities, different interests, different priorities, who both contribute in the way that they see as important in a complementary fashion.
I'm waiting for the but.
No, that's it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's that. Here's the thing. I completely agree with what you're saying. But when I was telling the story, I completely neglected to point that out.
It just had a blind spot. The story had a blind spot.
It was an error of omission, and I did not mean to underplay.
I can see that.
Yeah.
If in 5 seconds you'd also said, I'm sure my mom was also busy, but I didn't see what she was doing, so I don't actually know.
Right.
Would that have been sufficient?
It wouldn't have been. I mean, it would have been better than what I did, which was nothing. Or saying that apparently at one point I said that everybody just kind of went inside and melted into puddles. Okay. And when I said everybody, that by implication includes both my mother and my spouse, which is absolutely not what happened because they are both working just as hard as I was. Okay,
so do you guys, and I don't know how every other marriage works. I assume some of them are kind of like mine. For the most part, my wife and I have, of all the chores that have to be done, we have ones that we prefer. And most of the time, they don't. They're complementary in that she can do the one she prefers. I can do the one. Jack Sprat and his wife. You know the nursery rhyme? Jack Sprat could eat no fat. His wife could eat no lean. And so between the both of them, they lick the platter clean.
I never heard that, but I also don't get my morals from nursery rhymes. But please continue.
Yeah. So that's the idea. Like, for instance, when we get home, Alicia starts taking the kids inside and getting them into bed and making sure that there's, like, milk in the fridge and a plan for breakfast in the morning. And I stay outside and empty all the suitcases out of the car and vacuum up the Cheerios off the carpet. And it's not like if she stayed out and helped me with the car, it would get done faster. It's just we both decided that I'll do one part of it and she'll do the other part of it. And we both kind of get an air towards our own preferences.
No, that makes sense. I mean, that's how every marriage kind of shapes out. There is like you said, there's a finite amount of combating entropy that has to be done and divide and conquer. Like if you prefer doing this and you prefer doing this. The hard part is when you run into those chores that either both people prefer or both people loathe. For example, yes. Neither my wife and I mind folding laundry. I enjoy folding laundry because I get to put my book in my ears and just kind of zone out while I do it. And I don't know why she likes doing laundry, but there you go. But at the same time, we both loathe cleaning the cat boxes. And so it's always this game of chicken to see. Like it's shooken out that my wife is the one that does it primarily. And I will, I'd like to say with my good grace, but no, I will absolutely begrudgingly and complaining the entire time, like help her on those occasions when she needs the help.
Nice. Yes, I agree with you. I think that there are definitely things like that. What happens, particularly in a military family where one spouse is in the, can potentially deploy at any time, is then there come these times where like, I deploy over to the desert and she's at home and then she has to grapple with all the things that were mine and either do them her way or just decide they're not going to get done.
We've talked about those before. You had a big long story about the car problems that your wife was having while you were last in Florida, I think.
Yeah. And it's good. I learned about this once in college. They talk about how in a marriage you actually outsource part of your own brain in that, like, when there are things to think about, there's some stuff you just economize and don't think about because the other person's thinking about it. And then if you get divorced or they die, it's like getting a lobotomy.
Ooh. You know what? That's a horrible way to put it, but you're absolutely right. Like if Nicole was to leave for a few weeks, I would have absolutely no idea what I was doing any given day of the week because she's the one that tracks all of that. Right. And if I was gone for a while and she couldn't get in touch with me, she wouldn't have the passwords to anything.
Right? So especially if it happened like suddenly or unexpectedly where you didn't have the time to plan a contingency or pass things along.
Oh, that's ugh. There needs to be better. There's got to be a better way, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, humans naturally conserve energy, and like you said, there's the things that nobody wants to do, and you kind of have to draw straws on those. But then there's those things that neither of you mind doing, and you can kind of both contribute to. And it just depends on which is which. I don't always know the things that she's doing. She doesn't always know the things I'm doing. We value each other's contributions, and together we get the job done.
Oh, Ben, that was one of the nicest, bad at husbanding segments we've done in a long time. You actually came out looking slightly positive from that.
All right, then. It's time for Bad at Logic.
Excellent. And since this is an odd week, and I am the odd one, we are going to do bias.
Yes.
So, Ben, we tried doing this bias before in, now mythical episode.
The failed episode 77.
Yeah, episode 77,
My bad.
version 1. Somebody's bad. It's the podcast. It's a partnership. I accept at least 5% blame. So we are going to talk about the fundamental attribution error.
Yes.
And this, the text on the card, which is the Your Bias Is cards, the gift that keeps on giving. You judge others based on their character, but you judge yourself based on the situation. And this also goes back to my main theme. One of the cross-stitch pillows of my life is that you are the star of your own life. Because no matter,
that will come up again this episode.
Whatever situation is you find yourself in, you know the backstory. You know how you got there. You know why you're doing these things. You understand your own motivations. You have all the information to judge yourself and your actions appropriately. However, because when you see some other random person that intersects your life for a tangential second, and they're doing something that you don't agree with, you don't have any of that context, and you will immediately snap judge them based on what they are doing.
It's the fundamental attribution error.
Yes, it is.
So I want to give an example of this that happens in my everyday life. I don't know about other people's workplaces, but in most military workplaces, there tends to be a room somewhere in the building where they have what's called a snack fund.
Yes.
Snack fund is the military term that means basically like a pay-as-you-go unattended snack bar. Sometimes when it's in more public areas, they tend to have to control it a bit more. I've seen ones in hospitals that kind of have like a kiosk where you can scan and pay with a credit card. But some are very low maintenance, and usually the profits go to benefiting like the unit booster clubs. You can pay for like the annual Christmas party or whatever. So the building I'm in has one of these snack funds. It's in this break room that's off to the side. Sometimes it's unattended, and there's just a big open cash box with a big pile of money in it. And then next to it is an IOU paper where people will write down if they didn't have cash or change or whatever and they want to take something out without paying for it.
And it's unattended?
Yes, it's unattended.
So that the entire IOU list must fit on a Post-it note.
Oh my gosh, the IOU list is this monstrous piece of paper with like strike-throughs and scribbles and different colors of ink and all over it. It's insanity. It's a clipboard. It's like 4 pages. Oh, and it has like in bold font, it's like clear out your IOUs every Friday. Yeah, there's no way that's happening. Anyway, if you were just a fly on the wall and you could see someone come in, maybe they go in, they get a Diet Coke out of the fridge, they do the pat down and realize they don't have any money, and then they reach for the clipboard and don't see a pen, they're just like, and shrug and walk away and maybe figure it out later, come back and pay later. So with the fundamental attribution error, if you saw that person, you might go, that person's a thief.
Well, no, if I saw this person, I would immediately stop them and be like, okay, the biggest problem is you don't have a pen. Who, how many pockets are on your uniform, Ben? And how many of them are designed specifically for pens?
But if you're the one who took the Diet Coke without paying for it or writing your name on the IOU roster, you don't think of yourself as a thief. You think, I'm going to pay for this later.
All right, so first of all, I would never take a Diet Coke. And second,
dang, I should have said Dr. Pepper.
If you said, I would, yes, okay. If I pulled a Dr. Pepper out of the fridge and I wanted to drink it, and I was thirsty, and I didn't have a pen, I would stare long and hard at that can of Dr. Pepper, like wrestling with my inner demons before putting it back and leaving, or borrowing money from somebody else.
Okay, so you would never run a negative balance.
Knowing myself, I don't like running negative. All right, so this might be something you...
Okay, but would you judge someone else harshly if you oversaw them doing that? Would you say that person's a thief?
Yes, I absolutely would. 100%.
It's the fundamental attribution error. It's a bias.
you have stumbled into a territory of my personality that is the most spiritual that I am. This is a weird karmic thing that I carry around. I don't like owing anybody money for any reason. Like it haunts me.
Even a clipboard on top of a table?
Yes. For example, one of my coworkers had their birthday, and basically the boss, like, we all just throw $20 at whoever volunteers, and the boss takes that money and goes and buys something for that person. Okay. And we can have input if we want, or we can go on our own if we want, or we can just pool it. So this time I was like, oh yeah, no, I'm good for the $20. Please just pay for the thing. It's like, okay. And then the birthday came and she gave the gift. Hooray. And then, like, for a week, it was like just hanging on me. Like, I owe this person $20 that I haven't given them yet because I didn't have any cash. And, like, who has cash? Finally, like, it got so bad. I was there on a Thursday. It was the last day in the office. And I'm like, okay, I have not gone to an ATM and this is plaguing me. Can I please just send you a Zelle?
Send you digital money.
Yeah, can I just transfer you the funds using one of the built-in functions that you can in your bank app that lets you do that nowadays?
Did they understand what you were saying?
We work in an accounting firm, so yes, she understood the way that money can move from one place to another.
No. I mean, did she understand that you were saying, this is a cognitive burden that is weighing on me night and day that I would like to get out from under?
No, of course not.
I can do that momentarily by doing something unconventional with the transfer of money, doing this in a way that's not the social convention but would relieve me of my burden. Please let me do that.
So you're forgetting this is a professional environment, so I can show no weakness. There is no like cracks in this armor over here. It's like,
sometimes when I'm in a situation like you're describing, I just tell people. I'd be like, I get that you don't want to let me do this because you're trying to be polite, but I am not going to be able to stop thinking about this so I take care of it. So please, just for the sake of our relationship and my mental well-being, just let me do this.
If she said no to the Zelle, I was going to go to an ATM on my lunch break. Like, that was the plan.
Yeah. Okay. All right, well, we definitely stumbled in one of those areas where you might be prone to suffer from the fundamental attribution error.
Inform yourselves. Be a little bit better every day. Do a little bit of H of G. What is it? I can never get it right.
Hermeneutics of generosity.
Heterosexuality of generosity.
For Better English today, Josh, let's talk about a word I haven't introduced before. The word is kit. Now, kit is a word that everyone in America seems to know, but this is one of those great words where the meaning of it in the UK changed in the 19th and 20th centuries, so it isn't used the same in America as it is in the UK.
Okay.
So when I got there, I heard people using the word kit in a way I'd never heard. When we say kit in America, US English, we tend to mean like a group of things that are like a model kit would be a group of parts that can be assembled into a single model. Or a first aid kit, a bunch of pieces, or a travel hygiene kit. You know, you assume it means all of the things necessary to do hygiene while you're traveling, or all the things necessary to perform first aid, or all the things necessary to build this model.
Yeah.
So the word kit kind of just means an associated group of things.
Well, to achieve like an objective. Like when we think of kit, it's a box of stuff that will do the thing that it says on the box. A first aid,
like if you say a toolkit.
A toolkit is a bunch of stuff put together that are tools. A first aid kit is a bunch of stuff put together to let you achieve first aid. That's what we're thinking about.
Yes, and the British can use it that way, but that most of the time they don't. They use it to mean something else I'd never heard before. They use it to mean gear or uniform. So, like they say, well, boys, let's get ready for the football match. Go get your kit.
Okay.
And they mean your soccer shoes and your knee pad, your shin guards, and your, jersey top.
Go get your stuff.
Yes. Or if you say you need to you're getting ready to deploy and you need your deployment gear, they would say get your deployment kit. Now, the thing about this is the word dates back to like the 13th century. It comes from Middle English, but it meant a collection of personal belongings, but initially meant a round wooden tub. And the interesting thing that happened in the etymology development was it initially meant a container, and then it came to mean just the things in that container. There was this transferable meaning from the container to the stuff that's in it.
Fascinating. Tell me more.
So basically, the British use it to mean like they could say school kit or football kit, and it just means gear. We would use the word gear or equipment when they say the word kit.
Okay, so it seems like they're kind of using it in the same way. They just have a broader definition of what can be called kit.
Yes, we would never say. You would never tell your son, "Go get ready for soccer practice. Go get your soccer kit." You would say, "Go get your shin pads." And
I tell him, "Go get your soccer bag." Because
soccer bag.
Again, that's something else my wife does very well. Is when we sign up for these kinds of things, she's very good about creating kits for the things. Like my daughter right now has a dance kit. It's a bag that has all of her dance things that are in it, and it has rotating socks and shoes and whatever. And so
you could use this meaning. You could say, "Go get your soccer kit" or "Go get your dance kit."
Yeah, but if I wanted to use proper British, I would drop the adjective and just say kit. Hey, go get your kit, and then leave it up to them based on the context of the situation what kit that they were going to get.
All right. Well, listeners, if you'd like to try this one out, you're welcome to.
Confuse your children.
So for our main segment today, Josh, we are going to talk about the book Superbetter by Jane McGonigal. Now, I'll give you a little bit of background. This book, I didn't know about it. I didn't have it recommended to someone else like I normally do with books. This book I heard about on the podcast, on the Freakonomics podcast spinoff called People I Mostly Admire by Dr. Stephen Levitt. And he is an economics professor at the University of Chicago, and he was interviewing Jane McGonigal on his show, and he was talking to her about her ideas about gaming, and specifically the science behind gaming and how that relates to human performance. And he said a couple of times over the course of the interview, "I was really fascinated by this idea that was in your book." And so I thought, okay, a book about the science of gaming, let's talk about that on the podcast. So I picked the book, and we started reading it. What are your thoughts, Josh?
My very first thought about Superbetter by Jane McGonigal is to apologize for any of our listeners that decided to get the book and listen to it in preparation to listening to this podcast. Ben, I already struggle with the non-fiction books that we read in general, but this was a real slog for me, man. I caught myself at multiple points, kind of drifting off and thinking about other things.
Okay, so it's probably not interesting for us to go on too long about why we didn't like it, because I think we can still have a good discussion about the ideas in it. However, listeners, if you're waiting to read the book before you listen to the rest of this podcast, don't.
Yeah,
don't read the book. Neither Josh nor I recommend it.
It's what we thought was going to be an explanation about the science of gaming. Turned out to be kind of a mashup, hodgepodge of self-help techniques.
Yes, I would say that this was an example of poor editing. I think there was a very good science book intermingled with a very mediocre, new age self-help book. And if I could have just read the science book, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot.
I agree. If we could have extracted just the little tidbits of actual research and studies that they had done about the different aspects of gaming and mindfulness and that kind of thing, it would have been very interesting. But trying to put it into this self-help, you can get better wrapper just really turned me off.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so all that being said, we'll put that aside. I'll put a link to her one of her TED Talks. She did a 30-minute TED Talk about the ideas behind her book. It's great. It's just down to the bare bones, bare ideas, and you can get as much out of this 30-minute TED Talk as you can out of the 10 hours it takes to read this book. So just watch the 30-minute TED Talk and you'll be fine. And Josh and I will give you the main ideas of the book. So in this book, she's basically... Okay, she started off with a personal story. Do you mind if I tell the story?
I don't. Go ahead.
Okay, so she got a concussion, and as a result of the traumatic brain injury, she was suffering some very severe symptoms. She was getting frequent migraine headaches. She was very sensitive to bright light, loud noise. She couldn't think clearly. She was tired all the time, and it was to the point where she was feeling suicidal. My brain's never going to heal. My life is ruined. What am I going to do? And it was in this that she was kind of reaching out for things that she could do, and she decided to basically gamify her life and try to solve the problems that she was having because of her traumatic brain injury by taking them on in the way that you would try to conquer objectives in a game. And you can tell, I want to say this, Josh, I don't know if you got this impression, but she seems like a legit gamer. She likes games, she plays games, she cares about games.
I got the impression that she knew about a lot of games, that she could talk about a lot of games. I did not get the impression that she actually played any of them.
Okay, so maybe I'm getting that from the interview that I heard with her, but she definitely plays the games.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. If she's going to be espousing the high points of all these different genres of games, it's good to know that she actually plays them.
Yes. And she's definitely not one of those scientific researchers that just gives the uninformed, not thought through opinion that games are bad for you.
Yes, I did appreciate that.
So she described this epiphany she had, and I want to go through it in detail because I thought it was brilliant. She said she was looking at examples of people that had gone through post-traumatic growth, where they'd had something horrible happen in their life. And we talk a lot about post-traumatic stress and the negative effects of something traumatic happening in your life. But she said she was specifically looking at people that had something difficult happen in their life, some kind of major setback, whether it be physical, emotional, social, or fiscal even. And then when they got over it, they had this really profound growth in their life. And they would say things like, my priorities have changed. I'm not afraid to do what makes me happy. Or, I feel closer to my friends and family. Or, I now understand myself better than I ever have before. Or, I have a new sense of meaning and purpose in life. Or finally, I'm better able to focus on my goals and dreams.
Well, this was interesting to me because it really made me think about defining the rest of the bell curve. Because, like you said, in the press, and everybody has heard of post-traumatic stress disorder. Somebody goes through something traumatic, and then it just haunts them for the rest of their life to the point where it's almost debilitating in the worst cases. But we don't ever hear about the rest of that bell curve, because that's how people respond to everything is a bell curve. Yes, post-traumatic stress is probably the bottom of this bell curve where not everyone suffers from it, but the people that do, it's pretty traumatic. Then there's going to be this big part in the middle where people go through traumatic events and just get to the other end like, whoa, that sucked, and then continue with their life. But then there is this other side, and that's what she wanted to focus on, of people that go through this traumatic event, and then it is some kind of catalyst for major positive change in their life.
Right, exactly. But she was noticing, and I've noticed this exact same thing in my past, is I look at those people that tend to be like motivational speakers or telling you, and they've achieved some new height in their life of emotional and wisdom and intelligence or physical achievement, and they look back on whatever trauma it was they suffered as something beneficial, and they found a way to turn that trauma into growth. And she was looking at that of these people, and she's like, how can I do that? I want to do that. And so it made me think of a friend I had. So about 7 years ago, I had a friend in the Air Force that I met in Colorado. She was also in the Air Force, but we met playing Magic. She used to come to the same Magic store that I'd play on Friday nights, and she'd come and play, and we'd play against each other, and we had some of the same group of friends, and we were Magic friends. Well, one day I was friends with her on social media, and I'd moved away, and one day I saw that she had been in a horrible bicycle accident, and she'd been paralyzed from the chest down.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So she ended up getting discharged from the Air Force, and she was kind of in that period where she didn't know what she was going to do. And she decided that she was going to try to ride bicycles again. I'll put a photo of her in the note. She now rides basically a recumbent hand bicycle where she lays her body down on this platform and she's in between three wheels and she pumps it with her arms and she does like competitive races and it's great. So just this week she posted this thing and it's very much like that same list I had. She said 7 years ago it was a difficult day for me, but I'd like to share some lessons I've learned over the past 7 years. And then she says, even when you learn life is fragile, it's easy to keep taking it for granted. I'm finding it important to remind myself these little moments matter. Your life's mission isn't to be an inspiration or impress others. It's probably more important to spend time enjoying your life. And throughout this list of things that my friend gave, she's saying the same kinds of things that Jane McGonigal was pointing out, that people who'd been through post-traumatic growth had this clarity of their purpose, their desires, that not afraid to do the right thing, not afraid to focus on their dreams and goals.
It makes sense. You go through something really terrible. Like, you're going to want to focus on the things that are important when you come out the other end.
Yes. So the question she asked, and it's a really good one, is do you have to go through something terrible to have that kind of growth?
Right. And her answer is no. And then she starts to launch on her hypothesis and her process that she has developed and worked with other researchers and scientists and put in different techniques and processes to come up with this way that you can actively and decide like what you want in your life, and then experience or try to experience this post-traumatic growth through her Superbetter system.
Yes. Well, and there's a term for it. I hadn't heard the term before. Do you remember what it's called?
She wanted to get super better? No, I don't remember the actual words.
It's called post-ecstatic growth.
Oh, okay.
Post-ecstatic growth is that you make a decision to change in the place where trauma may have otherwise existed to help motivate the change. And I looked it up, and this is a concept I hadn't heard of before, but that's the idea, that you can decide that you want to make a change in your life, get motivated and excited about it, and make it happen without having to experience trauma as a pivotal event to motivate the change.
That's good, because we don't recommend to our listeners to go like walk out into traffic to get hit by a car or something. Like, you don't need to do that to experience positive change.
If you really want some clarity about your purpose in life, go get hit by a car.
This is not legal advice. Please do not go get hit by a car.
Yeah. Now, she said one other thing that I really liked that kind of tied all this together, and that was she'd read a book by a friend who'd spent 20 years working in hospice. And she dealt with people who were at the end of their life and had heard them in their quiet moments lamenting the regrets of their life. And they were things like, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. I wish I'd let myself be happy. I wish I'd had the courage to be my true self. I wish I'd chased my dreams and rather than doing what others expected of me. And she realized, and this was brilliant, I loved this. She realized that list of deathbed regrets was the exact opposite of the list of post-traumatic growth.
Okay.
All the things people said they wished they'd done were the things that people who'd been through a trauma and gotten through it well had done.
And that makes, I get that, but they sort of pick the top 5 things that people would lament about their mortal time on Earth, and they covered all of those bases. Of course, she's not. There's a little selection bias here in the fact that it's a book that she's trying to support her own opinion and her own hypotheses. Sure. And then there's also a little bit of, I don't know, probably confirmation bias. It's like she went looking for these kinds of things and she found them, obviously. But then also, who the hell is going to complain on their deathbed? Man, I really wish I'd have doubled down on that hard 8 when I was at the casino in 1973. That's not the thing that they're going to complain about. They're going to complain about the quote unquote the big stuff.
Yes. So let's talk a bit about what post-ecstatic growth looks like, because basically it's about making a really firm decision that you want to achieve some or all of these kinds of changes to yourself and your path in life and your future, and then actually doing the things and making it happen. She gave an example of running a marathon. It's not a small thing that you're just going to decide and get up and do the next day. It requires a commitment, it requires training, it requires drive, and eventually you're able to accomplish the goal. So she said there's 7 ways that you go about doing this.
Oh, Ben, are we really? Are we going to give the Cliff Notes version of the book? Is that what we're doing for our big segment here?
Yes, because I want to talk a little bit about each one of them.
Okay.
She's talking about how to live gamefully. Basically, her hypothesis was, I can overcome this problem I'm having because of this traumatic brain injury by gamifying my life, by approaching my life like it's a game.
Well, and that's one thing that I wanted to bring up with this whole thing is, as I was listening to it, I have a hard time listening to self-help books anyway. Just I try to come at it with an open mind, but I feel like I'm in a pretty good place. And so it's hard to hear people on their... I didn't go through a traumatic event, so it's hard for me to put myself in that mental framework. But I was trying to categorize the different kinds of things that she was talking about. And some of the big highlights, if we abstract the ideas of what she was saying, her entire system is based on shifting your perspective, trying to be less focused on yourself and more focused on the situation with you as a person in it, as opposed to you in a situation.
Yeah.
The other one was, goal setting, just having good goals, recognizing that there are steps, breaking down your overarching objectives into small, easy to attain smart goals and resolutions and things that will keep you focused on progressing through it. And the rest was mindfulness. A lot of the tricks and the tools that she's talking about, a lot of the gamifying tools, a lot of the, she talks, there's a lot of different, little aspects, identifying the villains and doing power-ups, and then also, creating your secret identity. All of those are tools to make you more mindful of the choices that you're making throughout as you're going through your life. And that's like really what she's trying to make people understand.
So do you feel like your ability to quote unquote see the code in the matrix, that makes it invalid?
No, it doesn't make it invalid. What I'm saying is that this is just like I'm not trying to invalidate her at all. Like everything that she's talking about is a great system, and it has clearly worked for people before. And like if this is something that you need in your life to make those positive changes, then absolutely read this book and implement it. And she does a very good job of breaking it down in a way that you can adopt it easily. But what I am saying is that this is the code in the matrix you're talking about. Is I'm just taking a step back and recognizing that this is one course of action to implement like a more general and broad like systematic improvement in your life.
I couldn't agree with you more, Josh, and I think that's why I had a similar experience to you where I didn't really like the part of this book that just felt like a schmaltzy self-help book. Because underneath it are the same ideas you might see in other contexts, like military basic training or a business seminar or a religion class on Sunday. It's the same underlying ideas that are simply just about how do I transform my heart and soul to achieve whatever it is I want.
I don't know how many times in my life I'm going to see the OODA loop repackaged and fed to me.
Right. Okay. So our stats, if we're going to use the terminology of gaming, are mental, emotional, physical, and social. And so she kind of breaks it down about how you're going to do those things. She gave 7 ways that she goes about this. I'm going to run through them real fast.
Okay.
Adopt a challenge mindset. Seek out whatever makes you stronger and happier. Strive for psychological flexibility, and we'll go some more into what that means. Take a committed action. She calls these quests. Cultivate connectedness. Find the heroic story. As you mentioned before, everyone's a hero of their own life. And learn the skill of benefit finding. So, like you said, these can be repackaged in other ways and called other things. Underneath it, it's still the same kind of thing. So there's 3 parts to this book. One part is just her kind of introducing the game. The second part is like how to just do this in general in your life if you're not playing the game. And then the third part was a bunch of specific ways to do it. And I was really checked out by that point.
Oh, man. Like her going on for 45 minutes about ninja body transformation. Yeah.
Yeah. Ninja. It felt like I was sitting in a bad seminar that I wish I hadn't paid for.
I feel like, have you ever been reading a book? Like I listened to this book on Audible, but have you ever been like reading a book and then like all of a sudden you like shake your head and realize I don't remember a single word that I've read for the last half an hour. That happened to me multiple times in that 3rd section of this book.
Okay, so I'm going to tell a pattern that she followed in writing of the book that I'd like to follow now in what we're doing, and that is she would introduce an idea about how to apply these 7 ways of doing this, and then she would say, try this, and then she would give her specific application that she'd come up with in her game she called Superbetter, that she did with herself and her friends to help her overcome her concussion symptoms. And then she would do a very specific pattern. She would say why it works, and then she would go into some very specific academic research that took apart her little piece of the game and what the underlying psychological principles were or physical principles, and then specific research up to, I think she cited as many as 1,000 sources in this book. Like there's some real rigor behind what she was doing, and then how to apply it. So that was the part I felt like could have been another very short book that I would have enjoyed a lot, but that wasn't this book.
Actually implemented.
So, for instance,
go ahead.
For instance, she gave an example. She gave scientific examples of where this has been applied in the real world. One I was fascinated to hear about is that burn patients in this one particular ward, they would give them a virtual reality headset and put them in snow world while they do their burn treatments. And so imagine somebody with like burns all over their body that they're, scrubbing off your like rotting flesh, and it's must have just been utter torture. And they just put a headset on you and you're in like winter wonderland, and they found that the people that wore these VR headsets had less pain, required less drugs, and had a faster recovery than people who were placebo or some other treatment.
Right. And then they talk about the reason for that is mostly because we have limited cognitive function. Like people that say you can multitask, that's great, but you're not actually multitasking. Your like logical thinking brain can only handle so much at a time. And so if you pour yourself into like a simulated environment, the more realistic, the better, the more feedback, the better. And that's why they had the virtual reality headsets. Then like their attention is off of their burns. It's off of the procedure that's being done to them. and it's more focused on other things that are going on.
Yes, so your attention helps with the pain management part, but there are other parts as well where like there are parts of your body that you don't necessarily interface with directly that are happening, but you can do things that will be healthy for them. So she described one particular biological process I hadn't heard of, but she cited a lot of research about it, and she called it your vagal nerve, and there was a 3-letter acronym for it. I forget what it was. Basically, it can be measured by how quickly your heart changes arrhythmatically when you breathe in.
Yes, it's they have that breathing exercise where you're supposed to inhale for like 3 seconds and then exhale for 6. And it doesn't matter what the numbers are. It's just the idea is you should be exhaling for twice as long as you're inhaling. And you can like change I'm probably mixing this up, aren't I?
Yeah, you are mixing it up. So this specifically was talking about how quickly the involuntary physiology of your body reacts to the voluntary physiology of your body.
Oh, okay.
So if you breathe in real quickly through your nose, your heart should speed up to get more oxygen to the rest of your body. But you can control the breathing through your nose, but you can't control the breathing through your heart. And so they can measure the delay in how quickly your heart adjusts to the thing you did voluntarily. And they found that there's a very strong correlation between how tightly that reaction happens to how healthy your psychological flexibility is. And then that corresponds to other events in your life.
I mean, that you start throwing around terms like psychological flexibility. Oh, because that's universally accepted and understood as, this person is,
I get it. We can argue correlation versus causation all day.
Well, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you're trying to correlate a biological process that can be measured with a psychological process that cannot.
Yes. Well, here's the thing. And here's a statement she made, and I wrote it down. Games, more than any other activity, create flow. And flow is a state the psychologists call where you're like very focused on a particular task and your brain is operating in a predictable manner that's very efficient for doing whatever it is you're trying to do.
You ever been into a good flow state when you're playing one of your favorite games?
Oh, man, I totally have.
I remember one time playing, there's Hollow Knight, which is a really hard platformer fighting game. And I felt like for a solid 45 minutes where I forgot I was holding a controller, and it just like the game just felt like an extension of my will. It was,
yes.
I got so much done in that 45 minutes.
Yes, I totally agree with you. There have been times where I've been playing Tetris and I'll set a new high score, and it's like I was just moving the pieces with my mind.
Listeners, sounds stupid, but if you've ever been in that state, you know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, but she is the kind of person that like doesn't just go, oh, that was funny. I guess I was off in some other place and really good at that. She's like, why does that happen? What does it mean? And can we use it for other things? And I like that about her and what she does.
Well, have you seen the movie Soul from Pixar? You can use flow to transcend to some afterlife and talk to dead people.
Yeah. So in each of these chapters, she kind of looks at different aspects of her game that she created as far as how to use that to apply to your life. So the first one she was talking about is the fact that you're stronger than you know, and how you can utilize games to kind of dip into the strengths that you don't know you have. And she gave the example of burn patience and some others. And then she talked about how not only are you stronger than you know, but you're surrounded by potential allies, and games can help you leverage allies. So she gives the example how some games people just have allies, like for instance how you used to play World of Warcraft and you developed this team of people that you felt connected with and you supported each other, you worked together for objectives, and the game just really brings that out in people.
Yeah, no, there are still people, if they knocked on my door and introduced themselves to me with their handle, I'd invite them in for drinks.
Yeah, exactly. The connection that you made in the context of the game was deep and profound, and that's not by accident. She talked about social games that are designed to be social experience, like Words with Friends or Farmville or Candy Crush that people play online, and they actually develop real, genuine connections. I currently play Words with Friends almost every day, and I play it with two of my elderly aunts, one on my wife's side and one on my side, and we chat and stuff, and I bet you if I saw them, we would hug and feel closer than we ever have, just because we play a crossword puzzle together every day.
Thanks, Ben. Like, I have family that listen to this, and then they're going to send me an invite for Words with Friends. Man.
So you get this reciprocity, this connection, this commonality. You have real-world trust that comes out of the fact that you can trust this person in a game. It's positive in almost every type of play. And she gave the examples of if you're with a stranger and you put two people in the room together and they are against each other or with each other, they'll still come out with a common bond. The only gaming situation in which it's negative is if you're playing against a stranger, you're not co-located with them, and you're against them. Then you talk about their mother.
Yeah, don't turn on the voice chat on all of the games that she was talking about. Like Call of Duty, you don't want the voice chat on for that game. You really don't.
Do you currently have any games you play that have some type of cooperative, team-based environment or...
Not currently. Like right now, Ben, is a very low point in my gaming life because of all the other stuff that's going on. But World of Warcraft was probably the most cooperative, like online gaming experience that I'd ever experienced, and like to the point where there were times where I mean, before we were married, my spouse got very upset with me because we would need to leave at places that we were at certain times to make sure that I was at events in game so I wasn't letting my guild down. And she saw that as an incredible waste of time, and I saw that as my commitment to these people that I had made online.
That's interesting, because fast forward 10 years, you guys were playing it together as a family. Did that change your perspective on it?
Not really, because we played it together and it was fun. It was very enjoyable to work together as a team through that game, but she never got as deep into it as I did, as far as like you need to like then make friends online so you can do the dungeons and the raids. Like, oh, you need to have 10 other people with you when you go on the more late game content. And so like there's you got to make
you can't do it. That's the great thing about that game. There are objectives that you absolutely cannot achieve on your own. You have to get a team, and it's a lot of effort to get a team together.
A good team together. And I started
the right team.
Towards the end of our experience, I started like holding her hand like through that, like, hey, let's go do these things. And she did not like it because she did not like the pressure of like fulfilling these expectations of random people on the internet.
Okay. That's interesting. So one of the central theses of this book was not just that you could observe this behavior in a game context and that maybe you could try to find a way to translate it. She basically was saying they're one and the same. Like this behavior you see in this gaming context is the same as if you were doing it in real life. And you don't have to translate it. It's the same.
Yes.
Now, the next thing that she talked about is what you said, that you're the hero of your own life. So she gave some great examples of a gaming context I never heard of that were fascinating to me. She talked about a research study that had been done where they had people participating in exercise where there was an exercise doppelganger. And they had a control group where it was just a random avatar that kind of didn't look anything like them, and then they had people where they had the avatar that they tried to make it look as very much like them as possible. And then when they would do real world exercise, their in-game doppelganger would appear more fit and more healthy. And there was this incredible correlation with how closely they looked like their doppelganger to how effective the exercise program was in real life. Which,
I mean, that makes sense. If you think about any diet or any exercise program you've ever been on, like the worst part about it is that you're pouring in, like if it always feels like effort. You're always putting in effort to either diet or to work out more or to make better, healthier choices. And the problem is that the gains are so incremental and small that they're impossible for you to see over time. Because you see yourself, you look at yourself in the mirror every day. And so these tiny incremental changes just kind of get all blurred together and you don't really recognize the aggregate change that's happening.
Right.
But
a game can make it so that you can see it better.
If you speed it up, and you work out for like 2 days and your avatar is like super buff, like obviously you're not going to get super buff in 2 days, but that positive feedback just reinforces all of the effort that you're putting into it.
So let me ask you this, Josh. Do you ever customize video game avatars to look like you?
Okay, so right now, Ben, listeners, don't at me and don't judge me. But if I have
I know what you're about to say, so it's too late. I've already judged you. Wait, let me see if I can predict what you're about to say. Josh, do you prefer female in-game avatars?
Exclusively. Like, if I have the choice of what my avatar is going to be in a game, I exclusively play female characters.
Okay, while you were listening to her talk about this part of the book, did this not influence you? Because she basically said, whenever possible, customize video game avatars to look like you to basically get free dopamine hits.
Ben, the last character I played in World of Warcraft was a 3-foot tall, like, Arctic snow fox girl. So that is absolutely not working.
Do you have a Nintendo Wii? And if so, did you make a little me that looks like you?
I had a Wii. I no longer have the Wii. And I did make an avatar that looked like me. Oh, you know what? Okay, here is probably the closest thing that this is going to come to, okay? Is there was a time in our life where every Saturday night we had friends over and we would play Rock Band for probably 4 or 5 hours straight while drinking excessively. We were in our 20s. That's what you did. And we got really good at Rock Band, Ben. And I don't know if you know this, but you can have custom avatars in the game. And we did. Everybody that was in our Rock Band set up their avatar and it looked like them. But what's also great is as you earn money and you do bigger gigs, you can unlock new clothes and new styles for your avatar. And so every third week would the entire night would just be us taking turns goofing around and making our character look as punk rock or as hard rock or as country as possible.
That sounds really cool.
It was really fun, yeah.
Yeah, nice. I love it. So in the military, sometimes you get education that's very specific to your career field, but sometimes they send you off to a different kind of education where they're just teaching you to be an officer, how to have the comportment and understanding and general skills of an officer. And one of the courses I went to was called the Air and Space Basic Course. And some brilliant, enterprising young company-grade officer had come up with a modification of the game StarCraft where they'd replaced all of the StarCraft weapons and vehicles and bases with United States Air Force weapon systems.
That was the dumbest game that I hated playing it every second.
Okay, so as a non-regular StarCraft player, but also as a occasional real-time strategy game player, I loved it. That to this day, that has been my favorite activity we've ever had because it was a good, high-quality commercial game, but then done in the context of a classroom. I get that you could break the game if you knew the rules and you could just get around it, but our class didn't. So basically, we had a room full of people, and there were defined roles and capabilities, and you had to do some research and learn about the scenario and the weapon systems, and everybody cooperate to achieve your objective. And it was great. I loved it. Why did you hate it so much?
Because everybody that was in my class didn't want to play it. They just didn't want to play it. I immediately recognized it as, this is StarCraft with a mod on top of it that's modifying the units or whatever.
Right, so they look like F-16s and C-17s.
Yeah, and there was, a dozen people in a class, and nobody wanted to practice. Nobody wanted to even do the thing, put in the time.
That's terrible.
And so, they put me and another guy that actually,
That's like high school PE where no one wants to play the game, and so it's not fun because no one's trying.
They tasked me and another guy with, coming up with our strategy. We don't want to play it, so just tell us what to do. And so then we came up with, an all-in strategy. Okay, guys, listen up. Based on what we know about not what the scenario is, but the game StarCraft, here's the strategy we can use that we will either lose within the first 5 minutes or we will win within the first 5 minutes. Either way, we will be out of here in 5 minutes. And they were all in. And
hey, know your audience and present a plan.
They executed it terribly, even though we were telling them exactly what to do, and we lost within the first 5 minutes.
Okay. So one thing I really love about online gaming communities is that they self-select for people that want to try.
Yeah.
So you don't have people there that are playing because they have to and don't want to try.
That's interesting. I'm going to think about that the next time I'm playing some online match. Does this person actually want to be playing this match? Do they actually want to be watching TV, but somebody's forcing them to play Magic online?
Yeah, it's like what I talked about, the difference between the Magic Online client that they made where you can have all the cards for free as opposed to the one where you have to pay a $10 entry fee to play an event. It weeds out the casuals.
That's a good point.
Okay, so she said on Earth 1.23 billion people play games every day. She specifically named some. talked about World of Warcraft, Mass Effect. She talked about how they require decision-making, problem-solving, creativity. They improve your mood, ward off anxiety, manage difficult emotions, help you process difficult things in your life. They practice leadership. They help you get motivation. They help you build friends. All these are some of the great benefits of gaming.
Yes, all of those.
I remember when we used to have to argue that we were getting hand-eye coordination, and that was the whole list.
Oh, man, Ben, I was in college when this transition happened, where video games went from being this fringe culture thing to, like, accepted general activity. And I was so mad at all of my friends at the time because I got an Xbox to playing Halo. It's like, oh, man, we're playing Halo, and it's great. This video game's great. Have you ever tried it? I'm like, there are so many games that are better than Halo. Don't come at me, like, having shunned me for years and years, and start talking to me about video games like you know what's going on. Ugh.
Well, but why you got to be a hater? Why don't you just be like, okay, let's play Halo?
Because I liked video games before they were cool, and I was
that's gatekeeping.
Yes, Ben, I am nerd gatekeeping because I suffered for my Marvel knowledge. I suffered for my proclivities when I was younger. And then now...
Yeah, that's hazing. I don't haze.
I'm not hazing. I'm just still bitter about all the negative experiences I had and all these now nerd culture is cool and popular. Man, that's just...
All right.
Ugh.
So once she provides a scientific basis for basically proving, and this is what her TED Talk is about, is it's great. She's like, everything you've heard about games is wrong. Games are good for people. Basically, she said that the scientific research shows that up to about 21 hours a week is healthy and good for you, and you get all these positive benefits from it. Above that, then problems start to arise, and it's usually because people are playing games in an unhealthy way or for unhealthy reasons.
Yep. That was 100% my World of Warcraft addiction. Like, I was way over 21 hours a week, and it's because I was trying to escape reality.
Yes, that was one of the reasons. So in the second part, she talks about basically how to be gameful in your approach to life. So yeah, all those benefits to games exist, but then you can utilize those same kinds of things in life. And that's kind of where the self-helpy part comes in. But I want to do this a little bit. I want to lean into it a little bit. So I sent you some questions about some of the things that she talked about in the book so we could talk about them. She talks about the challenges that we face in life and how to approach things instead of looking at them as threats, approach them as a challenge. And she talked about how when someone plays a video game and they fail, they don't get the same kind of psychological response as they do to a failure in real life. Like if you're playing Mario and you fall down a hole and die, you don't get depressed. You get up and you try it again. And that kind of resilience and determination is useful, especially if you can translate it to real life and use that same kind of approach. So she talked about challenges you could face in life, real serious ones like losing your job or being infertile or having a serious injury. But if you can approach those with a challenge mindset instead of a threat mindset, you can have all those same kinds of benefits of being resilient, making it through your challenges.
This is one of the parts of the book where I was listening and like you can't help but to agree. And it's right. I don't want to say that, oh, well, I already have a challenge mindset. I don't know if I do or not, but I will say that I accept things as challenges. Like I don't, if you give me a task that I don't know how to do, I'm going to go figure out how to do it, whether that's through tutorials or research or talking to other people or whatever. I don't see it as insurmountable. I see it as like, this is just something else I have to learn now.
So she talked about how uninvited challenges are easier to undertake, but a challenge mindset will help. But you, I think, more than almost anyone I know, Josh, you have, and I'm sure it comes from your history and your experience as a gamer, a challenge mindset to life. Like you're like, my shower isn't good enough. and then you take it on with the challenge mindset. My backyard is really kind of not great. And then you take it on with a challenge mindset. The same way you might approach like a quest or a raid in World of Warcraft. I need to assemble a team. I need the right kind of members of the team. I have to define what the objectives are. I have to line up my resources. I have to figure out how I'm going to get to my objective, and then I take it on. I absolutely must put this caveat that I would have done nothing about the backyard if it wasn't on Nicole's priority list, my wife's priority list. Like I don't go outside. That's good at husbanding. Good job working your wife's priorities. Yeah, I hate outside. Outside sucks. Okay, so once you've adopted a challenge mindset instead of a threat mindset, then she talks about power-ups. So let's talk about power-ups for a minute.
Yeah, so this is one of the part of the book that I actually like. I could get behind. I'm like, okay, this makes sense. And the idea here was that you need to identify the things that you like in your life, like little good positive rewards. Like when Mario gets the coin or a 1-up or a fire flower or whatever. You need to identify those things in your life and then use them the same way. You need to use them as little rewards or as little pick-me-ups, things to keep you moving in the right direction.
Right. So if you know what those things are, then when you realize you need one, you can do it on purpose.
Yes. And that's all I have to say about that. What do you got?
Okay, so she talked about the respiratory sinus arrhythmia, RSA, where you got the vagal tone of your 10th nerve of your vagus nerve, and basically how they could measure that if you have a 3-to-1 ratio of positive emotions to negative emotions in your life, that you'll have the healthiest level of your autonomous nervous system. But if you're below 2-to-1, where you have two positive emotions for every one negative emotion or worse, that then you start to have like physiological and emotional and social problems and stuff like that. So if you can decide what the power-ups are that help you increase the ratio of your positive emotions you're feeling, then you can do those things on purpose and help maintain the good health of your vagal tone, they called it.
Yeah, it goes back to the mindfulness thing again. Just be aware of your own physical, psychological, and social state, and then make positive steps and active decisions to try to improve it.
So do you feel like you thought, like, what are some of my power-ups while you're reading this part? Like, what are some of your power-ups?
So my power-ups? What are the things that I like? I like physical affection from the people I love. That sounds weird from most of the people in my, I'm sure that there are family members listening to me say those words right now and go, what? Because there are some...
Yeah, I love hugging my kids. I love slapping my wife on the butt. Those are power-ups for me. I like dancing in the kitchen. I'll talk to my robot and have her turn on some dancey music, and I'll dance in the kitchen. I like getting places on time.
I like having a little sneaky snack every once in a while. Something like I have a really bad sweet tooth, or like I just want a little bowl of goldfish. I'm just going to pour me a little snack dish of goldfish crackers. Like, that's going to be wonderful for me.
Nice. Well, so she asked about a food that makes you feel energized, like a power-up. What is a food that makes you feel generated? I asked my wife that question, or my daughter, and she said goldfish. So you and her both eat goldfish as a power-up.
I have not been that mindful in the things that I eat to identify, like, oh, this is the food that like metabolizes well in my system, gives me positive energy.
I like lemonade. Lemonade makes me feel like that.
There are people in my life that are very much focused on the food that they take and like what it does to them specifically. And whenever they start talking, and they will talk for a very long time about like the specifics of like the.
And you still haven't thought this through?
Well, no. Here's the thing, Ben. Is as they're talking about this, like one half of my brain is trying to listen, the other half of my brain is going, I don't have any of these problems. Like, I just eat food and feel fine.
So you haven't solved it because it's not a problem to you.
No, I mean, there's foods I like more than other foods, but that's purely a flavor thing. Like, there's very few foods that make me feel like energized hours later. Like, it's all just fuel for the fire.
All right. Do you have a song that's a power-up for you?
Okay, so for songs, I have two answers for you here. All right, so the first one is this is gonna sound stupid, but it's this mixed track that this guy made. It's called it's called All Day by a DJ Girl Talk.
I think you've sent this to me before.
It's an hour long, uninterrupted, and it's mashups of like a bunch of different genres of music all at the same time. Like, and they flow from one to the next, and it's just an hour of uninterrupted listening.
So do you put this on when you're like running a half marathon?
Absolutely
or something?
Not. But I have trained my brain. Like I did it enough. Like I listened to that specific track over and over while I was doing like intense physical labor. I've done it enough that I've trained my brain. When I turn that song on, my body knows it's time to do work.
Wow. That's fantastic. That's exactly what she was talking about.
The other thing that I do with my power song is whatever song I'm listening to this week. I have a tendency, if I'm at my job doing accounting, it's very quiet there because we're accountants, we're introverted. We don't talk to other people if we don't have to. So if I'm just doing a bunch of mindless work, like, oh, here's 80 pages of credit card statements that I've got to enter into the system, like low-level bookkeeping stuff, I'll turn on whatever my song of the week is and just put it on loop, which My wife says drives her absolutely insane if she listens to the same song more than like twice. But
yes,
but I have gone for 4 straight hours.
You're not listening to the song. You're just putting on background noise.
Yeah, well, and then occasionally stopping to like jam out to a specific part of it that I like. Uh-huh. So right now that song is Monsters by Imagine Dragons. Like I'm really jiving with that song right now. Nice.
Yeah, you also mentioned a couple of months ago, or maybe a year ago, how you the background of your life was the Hamilton soundtrack.
That was a couple of years back. Like during COVID, we were just listening to Hamilton all the time.
Yeah. I like to turn on Sell Out by Real Big Fish. There's something about ska that just really gets me going. But when I'm at work, unfortunately, one of the modern side effects of the, cubicle type layout environment, and particularly my work area I'm in, there's just constant din of people working. And for the most part, I can, handle, 60-second emails and stuff like that. But when I need to like read a 60-page Air Force instruction and provide, comments in a comment resolution matrix, I cannot do that if I'm in an open work environment. Little conversations of people will catch my ear, and my brain is just spending too much time listening. There's a classified area down the hall, and apparently the requirement is for them to have a speaker out in the hall that plays music from a local radio station. So I'm trying to focus my attention, but there will be the music and people talking. So what I do is I go to YouTube, and there's this thing called brown noise. There's lots of colors of noise. There's pink noise and red noise and white noise and black noise. I prefer brown noise. It just almost sounds like 2 sheets of sandpaper being moved together, like the ocean, but a bit deeper in all the ranges. And if I put that on my ears, my brain cannot lock on anymore to other people's conversations and music down the hall, and I can just focus on a task.
That is fascinating for so many reasons. First of all, are you aware that the brown noise has connotations with like experiments that they did in World War II? Like somebody in the military was convinced that there was a tone that can make people soil themselves, and they called that the brown note. And so you start talking about you're listening to brown noise.
I don't think that's why that color name is, but okay.
Okay, that's one. The second is I would recommend the YouTube channel Lo-Fi Girl to you.
Yes. Yeah, that music is. I need something uniform. Just something utterly homogeneous and boring to just filter out the auditory part of my brain's processing.
You need some kind of white noise, but you don't like white noise. You've settled on brown noise. That's interesting.
Well, I know it. Lo-Fi Girl's fine. Link in the show notes. She's fine. I'll use that for some things. But when I really have to focus my brain on something technical and boring, I need brown noise.
I use Lo-Fi Girl to drown out my family if I'm trying to do my CPA studying and they're like watching a WNBA game or something.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going down the power-ups list. So do you have a person who makes you feel relaxed?
Oh, that's 100% my wife, Nicole. Like, that is probably one of 3 people on the planet where I feel like I can sit down and just, like, completely open up and just be myself. The other 2 being my kids, and they're not very supportive. So, like, my wife's got to be number 1 on that list.
Awesome. I'll let you bask in the glory of having chosen that, and I won't do the same. My sisters. I'm the oldest of 6 kids, and it was me and then 4 girls and my brother. He was 10 years younger than me. We're friends, but my sisters make me feel relaxed. My sister, Megan, she's just brilliant and serene, and she's intelligent and interesting. My sister, Kendra, is artistic and thoughtful. My sister, Jonica, is energized and adventurous. She could, like, play hockey like nobody I've ever seen. My sister Emmeline is fun-loving and is always laughing. And so those are my power-ups, my sisters. They're fantastic.
I feel like after you gave that wonderful description of all of these, the siblings that you have in your life, I have to say this. I also have siblings.
All right. A few more power-ups. Do you have a go-to game you play when you need to power up?
Whew. How much time do I have? Like, give me a time frame.
Okay, let me categorize the games. If you want to like zone out for 2 hours, as opposed to like you're standing in the line in the DMV and you just need something to do for 5 minutes, those are obviously not the same game.
Definitely. If I'm in the DMV and I need 5 minutes, I'm going to pull out Magic Arena on my phone, play some Magic Gathering.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow. What if you get interrupted? What if they call your number before you're done with your match?
You go into the casual. If you know you don't have time or you're going to be interrupted, go into the casual non-ranked matches and then just...
There's no stakes?
There's no stakes. Just quit. Okay. Happens all the time.
So they call your name, you just concede and get up and go. Okay.
And that's something you should do. Concede, or else the other person has to wait like 5 minutes for it to disconnect you. It's rude to concede. If I have 2 hours, like the family's out of town or something, and I have done all of my projects, my honey-do list is complete, and I have done my and all the other responsibilities are taken care of, and I have actually 2 full hours to myself, what game am I reaching for? Right now, Ben, it's going to be Mass Effect. I got the
again.
I got the Legendary Edition for PC on sale like almost a year ago now, and so
that's a real-time role-playing game.
It's a third-person sci-fi role-playing game. Yeah. Like it's over the shoulder, like a lot of RPG elements. Oh, this is BioWare before EA gutted them, and it has just chef's kiss perfect writing, and it's so deep and so great, and there's so many little rabbit holes that you can just dive down into, and.
That sounds.
Don't get me started, but like it was on sale. I have all 3 versions on my PC with the high definition texture packs, and like, it's just so great.
Okay, if I'm just playing on my phone in the DMV, I'm gonna play. Right now, it's probably flow free. It's just this game where there's colored dots, and you have to draw a trail between the 2 colored dots, and all the trails have to weave around each other without intersecting. Okay. And there's only one way to do it. That one I enjoy. And if I got 2 hours, probably Civilization. I never got into Civilization 6, so right now my flavor of choice is Civilization 5.
Interesting.
Now, one power-up I have that isn't necessarily for me, but come in handy in my life. I'm going to share with you, audience, and you, Josh. It might be too late for you, but one of my favorite, best YouTube videos that my wife and I found to be a secret weapon. There's this YouTuber named Perry Grip who just makes silly, catchy songs, kind of like Baby Shark kind of songs, but just silly and catchy. And we found with our children growing up that when they were utterly inconsolable, crying their head off, there was one particular video that we could bring up on a phone or an iPad or a computer, and it would make them stop crying without fail every time. We've tried others, and none of the others work as well as this one particular video.
Please share with us this wisdom of YouTube.
It is called Nom 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 Nom.
Oh dear. Okay.
All it is pictures of animals eating, like bunnies and hedgehogs and squirrels and stuff. And then the song goes nom 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 nom, and that's it. It's just a song of singing nom 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 and animals eating like carrots. It's fantastic. I've never seen it fail to make a child stop crying.
The internet is so good for stupid things like this. Can I do a tangent for just a second?
Sure.
Okay, so are you aware of the meme, the Bongo Cat?
Yes.
It's just like a really simple sketch of like a fat cat that's like slapping its hands down, and they just put it on anything, like any music that you can imagine that has percussion. They slap this song onto it. There is one that's very popular where it's doing the Super Mario World theme song, and like it's just the Bongo Cat going nuts, right? Well,
yes.
All of my
link in the show
my
notes.
Kids and my nieces and nephews were all hanging out at my parents' house a few weeks back, and all of the kids were in the computer room, and I was trying to gather them up because we were going to leave, and I walked in there, and they were watching random Bongo Cat memes on the internet. All of them standing around. I'm like, oh well, you can't watch this without seeing the best Bongo Cat meme. And so I pulled up the YouTube video of it. Somebody took the scene from Whiplash, where J.K. Simmons is like trying to
throws a chair at Miles Teller.
But like the whole scene where he's building up to it, where he's like stopping him. He stops him every like 3 seconds.
It's Bongo Cat instead of Miles Teller.
Yes, and it's Bongo Cat doing the Super Mario World theme every time he starts doing it. And it's still J.K. Simmons like stopping him like, little quick there. No. Like, let's go.
You're ahead of
Not
me.
Quite on my tempo. Not quite my tempo. And then eventually throwing a chair at the Bongo Cat at the end. And like just all the kids just slayed him.
This is why the internet exists. All right, speed round on the rest of our power-ups. Did you have any more?
Power-ups that I use? Not really. No, I like every once in a while I'll open TikTok for 10 minutes. Like if I'm at work, I need a break.
Okay, that's a good one. She said try to activate 3 a day.
Oh. I like beer. I'll drink a beer when I want.
There you go. Those are also good ones. I like winning a match of Magic. So, like, I'll kind of have a league on standby, and if I'm just feeling frustrated, I'll sit down and play one match in the league. And if I lose, I'll play another one real fast, because losing doesn't make me feel as good as winning does.
Next thing you know, it's been 6 hours, and I've spent $50 on leagues.
I love getting complimented on some food I've made. So if sometimes I'll just put a lot of effort into making a good meal, getting everyone together, and we'll have a happy time sitting around the table, smiling, enjoying some food I made.
That's a good one.
I love playing around at disc golf. It's just getting outside. It's doing something physical. There's the reward of like getting a good shot off every now and then, and that really is a good power up for me. And earmuffs for my kids. I really enjoy having sex with my wife.
Are we really good? Do we have to label that as like
we are? And I'm doing it very deliberately for a reason. There's so many positive things that go along with this. It feels like living life on hard mode when I can't and I don't. But it makes me feel connected. It makes me feel appreciated. It makes me feel loved. It fills me with the good chemicals and the emotions and all of the things that go along with that. And it's a huge power up. That's definitely on my list.
But you just throwing it out there. Like, it's a huge boost to my entire existence on this planet Earth. Alicia, no pressure.
Why would I pretend like the biggest, one-up mushroom in my life doesn't exist while we're talking about it?
Everybody knows it, Ben. You're not supposed to say it out loud, because then it shatters the magic.
Now, she said right at the end of this section about power-ups is that your goal isn't to increase your positive emotion ratio indefinitely. You just find a range that works for you. If you need to do something more to increase it a little bit, great. But you're not just trying to you're a failure if you're not happy all the time.
You should be happy 24/7. And if you're not, you're failing life, because the rest of us, everybody on this planet is super happy all the time. If you're not, then there's something wrong with you.
So the next section is bad guys. And this, again, is kind of just using video game terminology. Like in a video game, your obstacles or enemies are frequently some type of bad guy that's trying to prevent you from accomplishing your goals.
All right, she did this. And yeah, it's just figure out the weaknesses and the things that you do that are counterproductive to what you want to achieve, and then give them ridiculous names. And the idea is that you're trying to take this bad habit or this thing, these challenges in your life, and then personify them, because it's
so you can stomp on it like a Goomba.
It's a mindfulness tool. And Ben,
yes.
I hate to admit this. This is one of two things from this book that sneakily actually made it happened in my life.
Okay, go ahead.
And then, because she's parts of the book, she'll challenge you. She's like, all right, pause the book right now and come up with one bad guy. And then I didn't pause. I just the first thing that came to my head, because I wanted to keep listening and get this book over with. And I said, Mr. Snacky Fat. and
yes.
That is my urge to randomly eat junk throughout the day when I'm bored.
Oh my gosh, Mr. Snacky Fat has been haunting me today, stomping all over me. I ate half a box of Milk Duds.
What was really stupid about this, Ben, is 2 days later. I made Mr. Snacky Fat while I was listening to her on a drive into my office. 2 days later, I'm working from home. And I got up and I walked over to the bag of tortilla chips. It's half eaten and sealed with one of our chip clips on the countertop. And I reached for it and I stopped and I yanked my hand back and I said, "Ha ha! Not today, Mr. Snacky Fat."
Yes, that's awesome. Oh, that's great. Yeah, so it could be Mr. Snacky Fat. It could be Sticky Chair. It could be the Devil Foods.
Did you identify a bad guy, Ben?
Yeah. So I had a few. I had the Last Midnights.
The Last Midnights.
The Swamp of Self-Loathing.
Okay.
The Phone Zone.
Oh, the phone. I know that one.
Gremlin Snacks. Those are the kind you eat after midnight.
Are you up after midnight? How old are you?
And Gooey Good Enough.
Ooh, yeah.
So those were my bad guys.
The good enough one, that sneaks in there, doesn't it?
Yeah. So she talked about improving your psychological flexibility by taking the "to" out of phrases like "I'm too tired to" and instead say "I'm tired and." And I like that. I like the way that kind of reframes the things that we face.
Perspective again. Yes, I am tired, but I'm still going to do these things because I want to make positive change in my life.
But when you can identify the bad guys, give them a name, then you can conquer them. So she said you can either avoid them, resist them, adapt to them, challenge them, or convert them.
I'm trying to convert Mr. Snacky Fat. Instead of like reaching for the bag of chips, I'm trying to reach for like the carrot sticks that I know are in there. I know they're in there.
Yes.
Ugh.
Yes, that's exactly right. So identify the bad guy, then figure out the optimal strategy, and then conquer him. However you got to do it.
Yep.
All right, the next gaming concept she talked about, she called quests. Quests are just like in a game like World of Warcraft where they define a discrete set of objectives that you have to carry out in order to get a reward that you want in the gaming environment.
This is like the thinnest veiled like goal setting that I've ever seen. Like set achievable goals for yourself. Start super small. The idea here is...
it wasn't thinly veiled. She just called it goal setting. She even used the SMART acronym, specific, achievable, whatever, meaningful.
Right. And the idea is she's setting different like time frames or achievability levels like for your quests. Like try to complete like a quest today. And like she would do quests in the book. Listen to this, like think about this thing. You just completed a quest. And the idea is, again, reinforcing this constant behavior of like making progressive, conscious, deliberate steps towards your end state.
Yeah. So I tried this once a few years ago. I don't know how I'd heard of it, but there was this mobile app called Habitica. I may have told you about this, but this predates the podcast. It was basically a mobile app that you install on your phone, and it's a role-playing game framework, but the way that you receive power-ups and objectives in the game is by accomplishing self-defined objectives that occur in the real world.
Okay.
So it's basically gamifying your life. So if you say, I have a daily goal to do 5 push-ups, then you would go to the screen, and then after you did 5 push-ups, you'd hit that you'd done it, and then you'd receive a power-up in the game for the goal that you had defined.
Okay, very cool.
So I did this with my kids for a while, my oldest 3 kids, where we were all in this game and we were on a team together, and there was bad guys that you had to defeat, and we would define our objectives and stuff. And I think there was some positive things came out of it. I don't think the goal was for us to do this indefinitely. And she talks about that in the book. Like the goal isn't that you have to undertake these things forever. You just need your quest to turn into your values, and values stay with you.
Yeah.
So the last thing that she talked about in the context of this was allies. Okay, so you've got your bad guys, you've got your quests, you've got your power-ups, but you also need friends. And yeah, it's easy to understand the context of a game, what you're going to do, but she talked about how to convert your friends in real life into allies in your quests for gamifying your life.
Man, Ben, I'm not going to lie to you. This, like, even as simple as she made it, like, oh, just have your friend, like, text you, like, twice a day or something. Like little things like that. Like, even that, I felt like, man, that's a big ask to just go to somebody in the world like, hey, I'm trying to get better, and I want you to take on some of that responsibility.
So you and I tried to do this in this podcast in episodes like 4 through 15 or so when we were doing the Bad at Magic Fitness Challenge.
Oh.
That's exactly what we were
trying to
doing.
be accountability buddies. Yeah, but I didn't ask you to text me 3 times a day.
I know. But that's not the only sign of doing this. Basically, she said, if having an ally can help enable you to achieve your objectives and overcome your bad guys, and get what she called epic wins. So you could be a good ally to other people by knowing what it is they need, bringing them power-ups, helping them battle a bad guy, give them a quest, or get a report.
This is honestly just like have a support structure. Like you're trying to make this positive change, enroll people to help you, and keep you on track.
The thing she was inviting us to do that if you aren't already doing is to actually engage with people on the level she basically says, let the structure of this silly thing we're calling Superbetter be a proxy for breaking down these barriers that we don't normally transit.
Yes.
Like, hey, I'm trying to stop drinking. Will you help me do that? Here are the things I'm doing to try to stop drinking. Will you be my accountability buddy or whatever? Those.
You be my sponsor. Like that feels like a huge responsibility versus, hey, I'm playing a fun game and I need allies to help me with my power-ups.
Yes, exactly. So I thought about, what do I need? What do I look for in my allies? Who am I trying to recruit to be on my team? I'm looking for people that have strengths where I have weaknesses. So all the things I listed earlier that were my bad guys, I guess I'm looking for people that are good at defeating those bad guys. I'm looking for people that don't procrastinate, people who are physically healthy and active, people that challenge me to think about new things or read books or do interesting things, people who are valiant in their faith, or people who are good listeners. What do you look for in allies?
I'm a lone wolf, man. Like I don't want allies. I want to know that I got to the top of the hill under my own power. And like if people were there to help me, that's great, but I'm not going to make my problems their problems. Like that sounds really bad and counter to everything that she was talking about. But I do not want to make my problems anybody else's problems.
So did you find yourself struggling with that when you're playing World of Warcraft and you needed to achieve objectives where you couldn't do it by yourself?
What ended up happening in those situations, if I ever wanted to experience content that I couldn't without this team, is I remember like applying to guilds and being like very like, they do interview processes for good guilds and stuff where you have to like talk to people on voice chat, and being very open and like, I want to do these things and I will contribute. I will do all the things. I will show up on time. I will make sure that like whatever quotas you set for resource gathering that I'm meeting, like I was aware that I was very much putting myself out there and asking these people to support me. And I wanted to make sure that karmic imbalance was always in my favor. I always wanted to be putting in more to the group than I was like asking for back.
Okay, that's interesting. But you also recognize that you couldn't achieve the objectives without their help. Do you feel like that's not the case in real life? Like you can achieve all the objectives you want without other people's help?
Like I'm pausing here because I'm trying to. I'm really
okay. I just had a realization about you. You decided you had the objective of remodeling your backyard, and you realized that you couldn't achieve it on the timelines or with the resources that you had available to you, so you needed to create a team. But you kind of got frustrated with the team forming process, and a lot of times I heard you say different versions of, "I wish I was just doing all this myself, so I didn't have to rely on someone else." They don't share my vision. We're miscommunicating.
That's very much true. Like there are multiple steps in this process where I looked out there and been like, I wish I had just done this myself. And if that means enlisting the physical manpower of some of my friends or family for specific points in time, like, hey,
those are allies.
Those
too.
and I get that they are allies. And there are times like in real life, if we're talking about that, like right now, the biggest ally I need is the ally who owns a truck, because I sold my truck. And I only have 2 little cars now. And there have been times where I need to go to Home Depot and come back with, a boatload of lumber. And so I have to call other people and be like, hey, I need to borrow your vehicle. Like I borrowed my dad's truck a couple weekends ago to get a bunch of lumber for a project. And I borrowed it. I drove the vehicle less than 20 miles because my parents live really close to me. Right, Ben? Yeah. I filled his tank with gas. I saw his right. Tank was at a quarter of a tank.
I get that. I get this ethic of yours, Josh. It's a good ethic. I wish in life we could always live in such a way where we contribute to the friend bank so that we always have a positive balance. But sometimes you have to make a withdrawal before you've had sufficient time to deposit.
And this is probably my biggest weakness right now. And I'm opening myself up here a little bit, Ben. Is that if people seem like I'm alone, I'm on an island, or I'd rather do things myself, it's because I recognize that I want to give back way more than I ask for in return. And I'm trying to avoid having to put myself in that situation. Like I know this about myself, and I don't want to have to like put all this out there. So I'm just not even going to ask in the first place.
So I just had an experience at work where I got a new person that came to work for me, and they came under kind of difficult circumstances. They'd had what was called a humanitarian reassignment, which means that the Air Force moved them out of cycle because they had a hardship in their family.
Okay.
In this case, the person's father had been put into hospice. And so that meant he left his previous job kind of with things undone, and it wasn't really complete. And he came to me, and on the way over, he'd gotten sick, and so he'd arrived, and he wasn't able to start contributing, and he kind of had demands on his personal life. And I could tell it was taxing him the way that you were talking about, where he wanted to help, but hadn't had time yet to make contributions into the friend bank before he needed to start making withdrawals.
Yeah. Okay. I can feel that.
And I think this is one of the times where it's just really important to give people an H of G, just How would you feel? I know how I would feel if I was the one in that situation. I'd feel terrible. But I also have the obligations of my family and my health and all those kinds of things. And you hope that people can give you some grace, but maybe they can't. So one of the strategies she proposed after this chapter about allies is now how can you focus your efforts, it's another mindfulness strategy, on what she called a secret identity. And I like this. It was just coming up with a cutesy alter ego that you could use in certain situations that helped you focus on what you needed for that situation. So did you have any secret identities?
Oh, Ben, this is the only secret identity I have that like I try to like imagine a separate version of myself that's better and aspire to be that person is the good dad. Like,
ooh.
And
so, okay, if you're using this right, it would be like, all right, a situation came up and I'm tempted to be the bad dad, but now I'm going to turn into good dad.
And
I'm going to stand here next to this roller coaster and take pictures.
Yes, and I've done this a couple of times. Like, there's a couple of times where I've actively like recognized that to be a good dad, I just have to do this, and then I do that thing. Like, there was a time my son was invited to a birthday party at a trampoline gym that was like,
that was a great one.
It was two,
and you just wanted to take him and leave.
It was like 2 hours long, and it started at like 8:00 at night. It was super late, and I was tired, and I'd been working all day. And I realized, like, in the middle of it, me being frustrated and not having anybody to talk to and nothing to do and being bored and just wanting to go, I realized all I have to do to be a good dad is just sit here and just suck it up.
Right.
And those are the moments where, like, the good dad's secret identity comes into play.
Awesome. I love it. Great example. So I have 3 that I try to put on, and these are that I recognize the flaws of my personality and the situations where that's going to be a problem, and if I can just put on this alter ego, it helps suppress those things. So, like, for instance, sometimes I'm just what they call the class spring butt. It's a military term they use for, like, when you have like, for instance, it gets to the end of the commander's call and it's the end of the duty day and the commander says, does anyone have any questions?
And that's you. You're the guy raising your hand. Well, sir, I have several questions before we let everybody go.
Yeah. And everyone goes, this guy. Now we're going to be late going home because he has questions. In those moments, if I can put on my personality, the librarian, I'm quiet. I'm contemplative. I just think. I listen to what other people have to say. I reflect. I don't share my thoughts. I don't ask my questions.
Just don't be that guy, Ben.
Well, sometimes I'm still that guy. Focus man. Focus man puts on the brown noise and can get a difficult task done in a time hard pressure situation, even when there are distractors vying for his attention.
Nice. Okay.
And the Big Lebowski.
Ooh.
The dude abides. If your wife is still in the bathroom getting ready and you're going to be late for the church, it's okay. No big deal. I got my White Russian. I'm wearing my hoodie. I can just chill, and everything's going to be fine.
You have never had a White Russian. I don't think you don't get to make that choice.
But he's still my hero.
Sir, we are going to Vegas in 2 months. I will order you all the White Russians you want.
Bro, what's a virgin White Russian?
Oh, God. It's just milk, I guess.
I have some superpowers. Like, I can find adventures in everyday life. Like Mike Rowe. You know, like... It doesn't matter. I will go to your work and wash dishes and learn what it's like to be a British pub kitchen.
I will volunteer to throw a bunch of tires in the back of my car and drive them on base.
So I can. You got it. I can find adventure in everyday life. I can be happy in sucky circumstances. That's one of my superpowers. It doesn't matter. Tight confines, basic training, old and busted. Doesn't matter. I can be happy. I have this great talent where if I drop something, I can always find it.
You sent me a link to your Reddit thing. Like,
yeah, this one resonated with people on Reddit. Some girl wanted me to come to her house.
Yeah, you have some kind of echolocation powers. And I know what you're talking about. Like, you can, it's like, hang on a second, that didn't bounce the third time, so it must have hit carpet. Like,
yeah, exactly. I like to pitch in and help out. I'll stay after and help put up the chairs. I'll, volunteer to babysit. I'll do whatever somebody needs at the time, and I feel like that gets me into interesting situations, help me to develop relationships with people. That's a superpower I have, and I'm curious about the world around me, and I love to find out new things.
We share that superpower. I threw that in. That's at the end of my list, is I'm also very curious about just random things in the world. I love talking. This sounds stupid, but if I ever am in a situation where I'm talking to somebody, I remember there was an electrician that I was talking to, and I started asking him, it's like, oh, do you do low voltage or high voltage stuff? And he like cocked his head a little bit like, low voltage stuff. And I'm like, tell me everything about wiring a modern home for internet. And I just
Awesome.
wanted to know. He did not tell me. He was very put off. He was very put off by that question. I feel like I can be very logical. I feel like I am getting better. This is something I am trying to cultivate in myself, of separating my emotional state from my logical state when I'm making decisions or dealing with people or interacting. Like, I need to take emotions completely out of it and just deal with the situation logically. Mr. Data from Star Trek. Just do it that way.
That's a good one. I like that. That's a good alter ego. Right now, I'm Mr. Data.
It's like, oh, that's going to be a lot of paperwork. That's a reference to a sitcom. I have an excellent memory. So there are certain things, for some reason, that I will hear it once and it will stick with me forever. I think my brother and I share this. Like, we can have entire conversations in movie quotes and saying no other words. It's also a double-edged sword, because when people quote movies wrong, like, that just really grinds my gears. I like to learn, and I feel like I'm good at learning. It doesn't take a lot of work or effort for me to learn a new thing. I think that feeds into why I have 600 hobbies that drive my wife crazy. I still have a box full of locks that I haven't played enough with, because
the lock picking.
I learned how to pick a standard like a locker room padlock, and then I kind of like put the box away because it was sitting out, and she's like, "This needs to go away," and so I put it away, and I haven't gotten it down since. I need to. I think about it at least twice a week. Like, I need to pick more locks. And I think my last superpower for you here is I'm very decisive. Like, I am. My brain does the weighted average thing, where I get all of the inputs. I have made like decisions in the past that inform the processes that my brain does to weigh and evaluate things, and I can make decisions quickly.
Yeah, those are good ones. All right, so let's bring it to a point. So at the end of all that, of talking about allies and bad guys and power-ups and all of that, then she says, and then you get to achieve epic wins. Big goals where you accomplish something that you wanted to get in your life. And really, that's kind of what you're after, right? You're hoping that all this will amount to something and give you something: happiness, success, physical stamina, mental resilience.
If we want to translate this, her definition of epic wins is really the major milestones of the improvements that you're trying to make in your life. Her quests are your small day-to-day, week-to-week goals and commitments that are going to help you make those changes. But the epic wins are the big milestones that show, hey, I have actually made progress towards being the thing that I want.
Yeah. And if you think about it in terms of like a character in a video game where you have stats, you have your physical, your mental, your social, and emotional, they aren't all going to look the same. Like, when I leveled up to the point where I finally ran my first ever marathon, that was a real big, obvious, epic win. But there was also the time where my wife and I appeared before the school board and convinced them to accept my son's European school credit and reverse the decision of the superintendent. That was an epic win. But sometimes it's also like, hey, that thing happened that my kids did that used to just make me get furious, and instead I just let it roll off my back, and that was an emotional epic win.
I have a couple. I finished. Mine are so so focused on myself. I finished grad school, and I used my GI Bill, and I got my degree in accounting to completely upend my life for the third or fourth time, whatever it was. Like, that was a good epic win for me. I run the Phoenix half marathon every January just to make sure that I'm still maintaining my shape. Every time I do it, I feel like it's an epic win. It's a glorious event, and I love doing it.
Nice.
The next epic win that I'm looking forward to is getting my actual CPA done, my certified public accountant.
That will be huge.
I say this, but it's probably wrong, but I hope that this is the last super intense academic thing that I have to do in my life, if that makes any sense. Like, while I love to learn, I've been buried in textbooks for the last 3 calendar years, and I'm so over it.
Yeah, it makes me wonder what other lasts there could be like that in your life, but that will definitely be an epic win. All right, let's sum it up. So, aside from the fact that we can't really recommend the book for what it was, I felt like it was really good, and I will be thinking about a lot of these concepts for a long time to come. just thinking about the challenges of my life in a way that's challenging instead of fear-based, where I can look at things the way I look at games. This is something that I can do. I can learn from my failures. I can overcome it. I can get power-ups. I can harness my allies. I can overcome the bad guys, and I can achieve epic wins and take on my life.
So this book feeds into this concept that I've talked about a few times on this, that I feel like some people just lack or some people don't have. And apparently I'm using the wrong word. I was always calling it agency. But she uses a different word to talk about the fact that people understand and believe that they have changes that they can make in their own life. And this is just one more mechanism for that. There are...
What did she call it?
Efficacy, I think. Self-efficacy.
Efficacy.
I'll have to look up terms and see if I'm using it right. But we're not talking about that. What I'm talking about is that if there is something about your life or yourself or your circumstances that you don't like, you have the power to change it. And there are so many mechanisms for doing that, and this is one, and there are a million others. The idea is that if something seems insurmountable, it isn't. Break it down into smaller pieces that you can handle, and then handle each one of those one at a time. And it might take a long time, and it might force you to change in ways that you didn't think that you could, but you have this ability. And that's what I just want to drive that into everybody's heads. Life doesn't just happen to you. You can make all of these changes. You can take control. You are the master of your own destiny. Like, just seize it. Go do it.
Awesome. Fantastic. All right. Well, listeners, if you heard something that you liked, that you want to engage with us, you can go on our subreddit and interact with us anonymously, or you can go on our Facebook page. If you haven't yet, go to our Facebook page and hit the like button. That helps us get visibility and gets people involved. We love it when our listeners get engaged with us and share your ideas and thoughts.
If you like what we do, share us with a friend. If you like us, maybe your friends will like us too. If you really want to show us some love, consider taking your phone out of your pocket and giving us a good review on the podcast player of your choice. It is ridiculous the visibility we can get from just one of those. And if you want me and Ben to review books without realizing that they're going to be bad books from now until the end of time, consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page. And thank you to all of our current patrons.
Yes, and welcome to Jen and Uriah, who just joined us this last month. Thank you for your support. And until next time, try to be a little less